Apocalypse. I can steal superpowers. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 526. Lucky. 4 or 500 people. So many? What about their status? GLUO felt that this number was definitely not a business dispute or revenge, but more likely to be collecting experimental materials. Sir, there are all kinds of people. There are beggars, students, young ladies, and prostitutes. What about gender? In terms of gender, there should be more girls, but not too many. Is that so? GLUO nodded thoughtfully, basically certain that the Changshan group was doing a very important experiment. If it wasn't an experiment, they wouldn't have to arrest so many people at all. If it wasn't very important, a young lady with an important status, like Xingzaki Zilan, would not be included in the plan. Of course, the Changshan group was actually well prepared. They found a group of scapegoats like Jiang Yiguangde to hide the plan. Normally, a black iron rank in the outer city, plus a bunch of professional soldiers with live ammunition, should be a force at the level of a push, but GLUO's sudden intrusion completely ruined the plan. Not only that, Jiang Zilan's involvement also made the resistance army start to fight desperately. The popular beauty boss was in danger, so how could her men not fight desperately? No matter how big the Changshan group's plan was, it would eventually have to capture 4 or 500 people. With the dispersed forces, the resistance army's rescue could not fail. Forget it, let's just leave it at that. The information you provided is very useful. I will try my best to introduce you to the resistance army. GLUO was very self-aware. He didn't think he had any strength in intelligence, so he didn't plan to continue to guess blindly, and regained his mind. Thank you very much. Daso Changai fully expressed his gratitude to GLUO. The emotion in his words was deep and suppressed. He suddenly bent down and bowed deeply to GLUO. You're welcome. I guess we may be colleagues in the future. My name is GLUO. Just call me by my name. At this time, GLUO had heard the sound of nearby gunfire. The resistance army was estimated to be about to break through the Changshan group's line. GLUO had already understood everything he wanted to know, so he waved his hand and turned to walk into the clinic. Mr. GLUO. Thank you. Osho Masakazu bowed again. He looked at GLUO's back in front of him and felt inexplicably excited. You're welcome. We're even. GLUO casually threw the rifle in his hand back, and it happened to fall into Osho Masakazu's arms. He walked into the clinic and called out Kikumi Masakazu's name twice. Sir. How's the situation? Kikumi Masakazu heard GLUO's call and ran out happily. He had a gun in his hand. Although he tried his best to express his loyalty, he looked like a traitor, no matter how he looked at it. It's okay. Push them both out and seal the tunnel. We may have a chance to use it in the future. GLUO reported, crossing RUO out from the corner and carefully placed the sleeping Lali Long on the cushioned sofa. By the way, Kikumi Masayoshi, just call me GLUO. Do you have any mobile beds? Take out another one. I have to separate the two of them. Yes, yes, yes. Master GLUO. I'll prepare it right away. Kikumi Masayoshi was just as considerate as Osho Masayoshi. Although he called GLUO's name, he still added Master. Kikumi Masayoshi was obviously very excited that GLUO told him his real name. He went to prepare happily, as if he had picked up money. When Osho Masayoshi walked into the room, GLUO was holding her Shizuki Erita and putting her on a clean mobile bed. Kikumi Masayoshi, this is Osho Masayoshi. He also plans to join the resistance. You take care of his injuries. Okay. Master GLUO. Kikumi Masayoshi deliberately emphasized the word master, as if to show that he was GLUO's number one lackey and that he must not lose his number one position. Osho Masakazu had some nerves. He had no intention of arguing with Kikumi Masatoshi. He just said hello to him and then let Kikumi Masakazu treat his wounds. It must be said that, although GLUO did not use his full strength in that punch, it was too fierce. Osho Masakazu's right foot was temporarily disabled. If he wanted to heal it, he would have to undergo a major operation or some kind of original healing talent. Except for the injury on his right foot, Osho Masakazu's other injuries were not that difficult to treat. Kikumi Masakazu, as a mediocre doctor specializing in surgery and trauma, was at least somewhat skilled. After more than 10 minutes of work, Osho Masakazu's wounds were basically treated. The most difficult right foot was also bandaged, and a plaster and splint were applied. Thank you. Osho Masakazu's emotions had stabilized at this time. He thanked Kikumi Masakazu, but from his expression, it could be seen that he did not like Kikumi Masakazu. Although both of them were born in the poor outer city, Osho Masakazu was at the bottom of the society with nothing, and Kikumi Masakazu relied on his nepotism to learn some skills. For this group of people from the outer city, who were considered scum, who were not counted as part of the population in the eyes of the masters in the inner city, it was much better to have a quack doctor to help treat their injuries than to die of an inexplicable infection. Therefore, the profession of doctor was actually quite popular. Kikumi Masakazu's clinic was so rotten that when Ino Mitsuaya was looking for a partner, she still thought of him. GLUO didn't know the inside story of this kind of twists and turns, but Kikumi Masakazu saw it very clearly, so he didn't try to get along well with Osho Masakazu. Don't thank me, this is the order of Lord GLUO. Kikumi Masakazu is worthy of being GLUO's #1 lackey. He is very good at licking dogs. In front of GLUO, he is so flattering that he is no longer a human being. I know. Osho Masakazu's answer was also very straightforward. The two nodded to each other, as if they confirmed each other's thoughts and expressed their agreement. Osho Masakazu has been able to get to this point by fighting with his life and blood and surviving 9 deaths. But people like Kikumi Masakazu are just luckier in their reincarnations and don't have to worry about food and drink. However, Kikumi Masakazu obviously has no ambition, and everything he does is for money and pleasure. He is a typical person who just eats and waits for death. The personalities and experiences of the two are obviously a bit contradictory. They may have heard of each other's names, so at this time, they have no intention of having a deep chat with each other. Instead, they all want to get close to GLUO. You two, don't stand there stupidly. Osho Masakazu, go and clean up the bodies at the door, take what you can, and pay attention to the situation on the battlefield. Also, if the winner is from the Changshan group, notify me immediately. If the rebels come over, don't get into a fight. Tell them Jiang Zilan is in the house and let them in. As for Mushang Changli, don't worry about your safety. The rebels won't attack you. Stay if you want. If you want to follow me, pack up your things now. We should be evacuating soon. Chapter 527 Zhujiangsha. By the way, don't expect to hold on to medicines and other things. Give them to the rebels. They suffered heavy losses in this operation and probably need them. At this time, GLUO had already tacitly regarded the two as his younger brothers. After giving a series of orders, he calmly sat on the sofa and drank the wine he had not finished before. Lord GLUO, I understand. Mr. GLUO, I'll go right away. Mushang Changli and Dasao Changai responded to GLUO's order almost at the same time, and then the two looked at each other very tacitly, and their eyes seemed to light up sparks. Then they turned their heads at the same time, and went to do things. He just two younger brothers, they started to have conflicts, intrigue, and fight for favor. It's not easy to lead the team. GLUO tasted the spicy wine bit by bit. His movements looked calm and steady. With his handsome face, he almost wrote his extraordinary momentum on his face. Of course, GLUO's pretentious attitude now is not to pretend to be cool. In other words, his purpose was not to show off, but to avoid being looked down upon. Kikumi Masatoshi and Osho Masatoshi, the two had just been convinced by him. No matter what their identities were before, or what they had been thinking, at least now, they all expressed their submission to GLUO. In other words, they were GLUO's younger brothers, but they thought GLUO was a rebel. Although they wanted to cling to GLUO's thighs, they did not have the intention to follow the rebels. But the truth is, family members know their own affairs. GLUO didn't know the rebels at all, so in order to appease the hearts of the two younger brothers and to make the rebels pay attention to his attitude, GLUO could only maintain his current deepness. Just now, When Kikumi Masatoshi and Osho Masatoshi approached him, GLUO actually felt a little troublesome and thought about throwing them to the rebels and leaving them alone. However, at that time, GLUO did not intend to join the rebels. Now, because he did not want to live in the open air and wanted to stay in the rebels temporarily, he could no longer fight alone and consider the ideas of his younger brothers. At least, when they meet the resistance army later, no matter what GLUO, Kigami Masayoshi, and Osho Masayoshi say, in the eyes of the resistance army, Kigami Masayoshi and Osho Masayoshi are GLUO's younger brothers. If they really take advantage of the power of others and bully others, they may really be believed. Let's take it one step at a time. The resistance army is in the dark. These two people can at least collect information by using the low-level strategy. GLUO is not a person who likes to calculate, but he is not the kind of fool who does not consider the future and rushes forward. He will join the resistance army, but GLUO still has no idea of living and dying with it. After all, this world is going to end. GLUO came here, according to the size of little GLUO, to complete Heaven's Blade killing. He is not a hero who saves other worlds. He is a traveler who finds the light in the dark and brings it back to his hometown. I will not risk my life for the resistance army, but I will never betray them. GLUO sorted out his thoughts and made his next plan. Before he knew it, GLUO had already drunk more than half a bottle of wine. The remaining was only enough to fill half a cup. At this time, there were scattered footsteps in the corridor, and it was obvious that many people were filing in. GLUO held the wine glass indifferently, and crossing RUO was beside him, as quiet as an exquisite doll. Mr. GLUO, this is Ms. Zujdangsha from the resistance army. She is. At this time, Daso Changai was not what GLUO imagined, being carried away by the resistance army. He was walking in the front of the team with a rifle as a crutch, as a guide, and next to Daso Changai was the leader of these resistance army, a woman with beautiful face and a faint charm between her facial features. However, unlike the charming look on her face, this woman's aura was very cold. She had a stern face, no emotion in her eyes, and a very strong aura. Especially at this time, after the woman walked into the house and saw GLUO. Before GLUO finished speaking, she changed the subject first. I'm Zujdangsha. Mr. GLUO, where is our general? Zujdangsha walked into the house and should have only glanced around to find Jiangzilan on the mobile bed on the other side, but she did not look anywhere. She stared at GLUO as soon as she entered the door, staring at him like a mortal enemy. Obviously, after Zujdangsha confirmed Jiangzilan's safety, she was no longer eager to see her, but began to test GLUO, the unknown person. When they met, they questioned and pressured each other. Zujdangsha's attitude did not seem to be like GLUO saving Jiangzilan, but rather like treating GLUO as a spy. General? GLUO looked up at Zujdangsha, as if wondering what the general's title was and who he was talking about. But after a moment of hesitation, GLUO seemed to have figured it out and relaxed. At this time, GLUO was holding a wine glass, with only a small section of tea-colored wine left at the bottom of the glass. His face was light red, and he looked like he was drunk. He smelled of alcohol when he spoke. Oh, you mean Jiangzilan, right? She's over there. Her condition is not good, but not bad either. She's okay. GLUO shook the strong liquor in the glass that could ignite fire and did not continue to drink it. Instead, he looked at Zujdangsha unpredictably and watched her calmly. Now, go see the general. Zujdangsha raised her chin, and her attitude was a little casual, but a neat woman behind her responded solemnly and went to check on Jiangzilan's condition. At this time, both the rebels behind Zujdangsha and Daso Changai next to GLUO felt that the atmosphere was abnormal. Some of the rebels had even tightened their weapons, ready to attack GLUO at any time. As soon as Daso Changai felt threatened, he lost his previous closeness and leaned against the wall next to GLUO, quietly opening the safety of the rifle in his hand. However, what was even more strange was that the tension and hostility of the subordinates did not affect Zujdangsha and GLUO. Zujdangsha stared straight at GLUO, and GLUO also let Zujdangsha stare at him. His mood was a mess, as if the rebels in front of him were just chickens and dogs. Minister Zuj, the general's injuries have been treated. There is no problem. Just rest for a while. At this time, Inauna had already confirmed Jiang Zilan's condition. She walked to Zhujiangshi and reported the situation in a low voice. Zhujiangshi nodded, and when she looked at Gluo again, her previous hostility was gone. Mr. Gluo, your accent sounds a bit unfamiliar. Have you just come to Hamakura City recently? Chapter 528 Mutual Testing. That's right. I'm a stranger. I just arrived. I'm unfamiliar with the place, and I'm confused when I encounter things. Gluo didn't care about Zhujiangshi's attitude and let everyone in the room look him up and down. Zhujiangshi stared at Gluo for a long time, but couldn't find any flaws in him. The cold expression on his face suddenly changed and he smiled. Mr. Gluo, please forgive my vigilance. Thank you for helping the general. You're welcome. I forgive you. Gluo also smiled. He didn't deliberately say that Zhujiangshi was not wrong. Instead, he chose to forgive him arrogantly. Although Gluo didn't know what position Zhujiangshi was in, Gluo's indifferent attitude made the people on the resistance side agitated for a while, but they were stopped by Zhujiangshi's eyes. Mr. Gluo, do you plan to visit us? Just call me Gluo, it's Milner. Gluo didn't give his name until this time. He picked up the lighter on the table and touched the wine glass. The remaining half of the wine ignited a flame. Ms. Dangsha, I know you are a little confused, but please rest assured that I was just accidentally involved in all this. Take the person who is still alive on the ground with you. They should be able to give you some answers you want. Thank you for your understanding. Zhujiangshi probably knew that her face was charming, so she didn't seem to like to smile. She watched Gluo raise his wine glass, tap it in the air, as if to toast her, and then drank the flaming wine. To be honest, it was a bit handsome. However, Zhujiangshi remained indifferent, did not say anything extra, and just made a gesture of action. Then, Inauna behind Zhujiangshi walked out, pushed Jiang Zilan's mobile bed, and began to walk out. At this time, Gluo also stood up. Oshoma Sakazu, leaning on his rifle with the safety off, naturally walked behind Gluo. The small clinic was not very big, and it was obviously not suitable for a room full of people, so Zhujiangshi quickly ordered his subordinates to evacuate. Jiang Zilan was the first to be transferred away, followed by Makio Hidenori on the ground. Jiang Mitsuyo was already dead. The rebels did not have the habit of collecting corpses, so after taking away the weapons, they just stayed where they were. It can be seen that the rebels did have a hard time. The robbers' spare magazines were searched out and taken away. At Zhujiangshi's request, the rebels basically left the house. Gluo held Crossing Ruo and asked Mushang Changli to push the mobile bed of Crossing Kizunyan out of the door. Although Oshoma Sakazu was disabled, as a younger brother who had been labeled by Gluo, he carried all the important items that Mushang Changli took away. Because of the length of the mobile bed, the car to transport Xingzi Qizilan was specially prepared. Gluo took a look inside the car and found that the rescue equipment was quite complete. It was obviously the good stuff that the rebels had looted from the Changshan group. At Gluo's request, Mushang Changli and Dasao Changai pushed Xingzi Qizilan into the ambulance, and Crossing Ruo was held by Gluo and followed him into a bulletproof military vehicle. The person driving the car was Inauna, who had always been with Zhujiangshi. She was obviously assigned by Zhujiangshi to protect Jiang Zilan, but now she was sitting in the driver's seat, obviously making other arrangements. Oh, this is the first time I'm in this kind of military vehicle. The space is so big. Gluo held Crossing Ruo in his arms, and Lali Long was still sleeping soundly, as if the end of the world could not wake her up. Indeed, although the military vehicle is not so comfortable to sit in, the space is very large. Zhujiangshi sat on the side of Gluo and made a gesture to Inauna, who was driving. Then the car started and began to slowly drive away from the street. Gluo, do you like it? I'll give it to you. No, thanks. Gluo refused without hesitation. Just kidding. This car is specially made. Just by looking at the heavy door, it can block bullets, and it can probably block rockets. Zhujiangshi wanted to give such an expensive car to Gluo, obviously wanting to repay Gluo for saving Jiang Zilan's life. Knowing Zhujiangshi's thoughts, how could Gluo agree? Not to mention a car, even a tank would not do. He is the leader of the resistance army in Binchuan City, a general. Ms. Dangsha, can I ask what you are responsible for? It seems that you are very frugal with words. Gluo changed the subject at the right time. Zhuge Dangsha rested her elbows on the car door, looking a little tired. When she heard Gluo's evaluation of herself, she turned her head and looked at him, with her eyebrows slightly raised. You are so frugal with words. You really know how to praise people. Just call me Zhuge Dangsha. The resistance army doesn't have so many red tapes. Okay, then I'll follow the local customs. Gluo knew that Zhuge Dangsha wanted to test his identity, and Gluo didn't mind his test. Similarly, Gluo also wanted to know some information about the resistance army. Zhuge Dangsha, I don't know if it's my illusion, but I feel that you have a serious and persistent spirit, which is very suitable for scientific research. Gluo, you guessed it right. I'm the director of the R&D department of the resistance army in Binchuan City. My main job is a researcher of source energy inscription technology, and my side job is to be a poor person who worries about my friends. Zhuge Dangsha told a not very funny joke at this time, but Gluo also smiled politely and nodded without comment. Zhuge Dangsha, I'm curious, you call Jiang Zilan General? Yes, it's General. But the reason may be a little different from what you think. Zhuge Dangsha seemed to want to implement the plan of giving before taking, so she was happy to tell Gluo these unimportant secrets. Jiang Zilan is my college classmate. She is a person who is easily moved by words such as hero, salvation, justice, revolution, new world, etc. When she was in school, she always liked to read extracurricular books, so her grades were always up and down. How her test scores were probably based on how interesting and fascinating the books she read recently were. Later, I don't know how, she joined the resistance army in Binchuan City. I didn't have this idea at first. After all, my family is good, and I have always lived a happy and satisfied life. I didn't think about breaking my vested interests, but Zhuge Dangsha spread her palms helplessly, and Gluo nodded, as if he had felt it. He pondered for a while, and couldn't help laughing. So, Zhuge Dangsha, was it Jiang Zilan who forced you to join the resistance army? That was part of the reason, but the main reason was that I was also very curious about the resistance army at the time. College students, at the age of 18 or 19, were full of youthful enthusiasm, and they always wanted to save and protect something. Chapter 529 The Abandoned. Life is always interesting. Anyway, after Jiang Zilan joined the resistance army for no apparent reason, I followed her and joined in. Zhuge Dangsha seemed to miss those days very much. She looked relaxed. Gluo nodded thoughtfully and slightly deviated from the topic. Zhuge Dangsha, so you and Jiang Zilan are students of Binchuan University? You are absolute academic masters. How could we have the chance to be admitted to Binchuan University? If you want to enter a place like that, the tuition fees will cost millions. Jiang Zilan and I were living in a decent school at the time. The reason why we came to Binchuan was that the resistance army first tried to enter such a big city, and we were thrown here as newbies to make up the numbers. Zhuge Dangsha's tone was very flat, but Gluo could feel that Zhuge Dangsha's eyes were always on him, as if she was very curious about his reaction. Gluo certainly didn't show anything unusual. So Zhuge Dangsha continued to talk, and slowly revealed more secrets. We joined the resistance army when we were about to graduate, but we served there for 2 months and then graduated. It just so happened that at that time, the resistance leaders thought that the plan of surrounding the cities from the countryside was almost done, so they wanted to try to move into the cities. And Binchuan City, as the core of one of the 3 major metropolitan areas, was naturally also within the resistance's target range. At that time, Jiang Zilan and I were just 2 silly kids who had just graduated. We followed the large army and thought we were so important. In fact, we were just cannon fodder testing the waters. Precisely because it was an attempt, the resistance army did not invest too many resources. The plans of the other 2 metropolitan areas quickly failed, and we managed to hold on for a while, but only about a month more. The government set up a trap, and the liquidator troops appeared, wiping out the resistance forces at the time. Zhuge Dangsha spoke lightly. It was probably a story from 4 or 5 years ago, not very far from now, but a unique indifference made her say that the matter did not matter. Only you and Jiang Zilan survived? Gluo didn't expect that this matter was not complicated, but full of twists and turns. He thought that Jiang Zilan, who was a member of the resistance army, was just a newbie. Yes, because the situation was too obvious at the time. I saw it. I took Jiang Zilan to change the road, and that's how we survived. Zhujiangxia pulled down the window of the car slightly. The neon lights outside the window and the cold wind blew over, which made people feel a little excited. At that time, the plan of the resistance army had failed. In the end, there were only a few people left. The top leaders issued an order for everyone to evacuate. It's funny to say that because I, Jiang Zilan, didn't experience the last battlefield. Some people felt unbalanced and felt that we were a bit annoying to be alive. So, when they evacuated in the end, everyone left, but left us too, saying that they would be the secret line, let us find a job, settle down, and provide valuable information to the organization at all times. Zhujiangxia took a deep breath and closed the window again. She rubbed her forehead and looked a little tired. Gluo, this is ridiculous, isn't it? Yes, it is indeed ridiculous. Gluo vaguely understood the truth. Although Jiang Zilan and Zhujiangxia were indeed members of the resistance army, their relationship with the resistance army did not seem to be so harmonious. It was a bit like a general being away from the emperor and not obeying his orders, but more of the fact that they were abandoned and were coldly abandoned. The two of them did nothing wrong. It was the people on the resistance army who were wrong. Zhujiangxia, so the resistance forces in Bunchuan City were all founded by you two? Awesome. Hey Gluo, let's not talk about those empty words. Do you think, is it possible? Two female college students who just graduated can have money and resources just by messing around. Zhujiangxia did not have the sense of pride that Gluo had promoted. Instead, she was calmer than a young person. That calm look made Gluo feel creepy. Jiang Zilan and I are among the abandoned people. There are pros and cons for us to stay, but it is a way out after all. At that time, I actually no longer wanted to make any contribution to the resistance army. But what I didn't expect was that when we two fools were staring at each other, a big money sponsor suddenly showed up and gave us more money than we could earn in a lifetime to support our evolution. It's ridiculous, isn't it? Two abandoned college students, both thinking about finding a job, but suddenly someone came to us and supported us to do big things, just like a liar. But the terrifying thing is, the other party is not a liar. The money was really given. Zhujiangxia's behavior and aura all show that she came from a good family and had a casual attitude towards money. But at this time, when she mentioned the large amount of support funds, her hands were still shaking a little. In this world, you can be ugly, unpopular, and have low emotional intelligence, but you cannot be without money, otherwise, no one will follow you. But on the other hand, if you have enough money, then even if you are a complete jerk, there will be people who dare to risk their lives and start a revolution with you. What's more, we are very rich, not ordinary rich. Is that person an investor? An angel fund? Or does he intend to completely control you? Gluo licked his lips, feeling a little uncertain. At first, he thought Zhujiangxia was going to reveal some information and then see his reaction. But at this time, Zhujiangxia said so many secrets, and Gluo felt more and more that something was wrong. He even suspected that Zhujiangxia was going to kill him to silence him. Otherwise, why did she say so many things? Zhujiangxia, you two have some power now. Even if that sponsor wants to manipulate you, you have the ability to fight back, right? No, on the contrary, the other party is a complete saint. They give us money, technology, and advice, but they don't give us any orders. Zhujiangxia reached out and picked up the thermos on the side of the car. She unscrewed the lid and poured herself a glass of water with the lid. She took out a disposable paper cup and poured a glass of water for Gluo as well. Many times, Jiang Zilan and I feel very stressed. There is no need to test or doubt the other party's kindness. How to respond to the other party's expectations and help has become a headache for us. You two are really kind. Of course, the other party may have chosen you because they saw this in you. GLUO took the paper cup handed over by Zhujiangshi and whispered thank you. The girl nodded with her eyelids drooping slightly. Maybe. Chapter 530 details. Zhujiangshi did not comment on GLUO's answer, but just knocked the side of the cup lid with her knuckles, making a crisp sound. GLUO, I won't hide it from you. Jiang Zilan and I relied on the funding behind us to successfully form a team in Binchuan City in the name of the Resistance Army. But, the Resistance Army headquarters learned that we are very prosperous here, so they sent people. Seize power. After learning the cause and effect, GLUO finally understood the situation that Jiang Zilan was facing. This also perfectly explained why Jiang Zilan was so famous, but her subordinates wanted to usurp power. She came prepared, and the strength behind her was not small. Zhujiangshi, what do you want to do? Although GLUO thought he was a little handsome, he was not a narcissistic person. Zhujiangshi said this to him from the heart when they met for the first time, and it was hard not to doubt her purpose. I plan to completely abandon the name of the rebels and join the financial backers behind us. Not a bad choice. GLUO said perfunctorily, but he really thought that this was a good choice. He kept using the name of the rebels. Even if the usurper was defeated this time, the other party would definitely send more people, and they would become more and more powerful. After all, Jiang Zilan and the others were facing the rebels. If the government had not been particularly vigilant and watched, their plans in the 3 major metropolitan areas would not have failed so quickly. I also understand that this may not be the best choice, but the rebels are not good people either. Their political infighting and factional attacks are all life-threatening. Zhujiangshi seemed very frank at this time, and GLUO nodded, as if it had nothing to do with him, without any intention of bowing his head. Zhujiangshi, the rebels treated you like that. You certainly have reasons, and are qualified to do so. Leaving them is a good choice in itself. Maybe, this time, the group of people in the organization who are biased towards the rebels have gone too far and are too ugly. I already have reasons to attack, but Zhujiangshi said so much, and at this time, she finally revealed her true purpose of receiving GLUO. I think I need a letter of surrender to join the group of the financial sponsor behind us. GLUO looked at Zhujiangshi sideways and finally understood what she wanted to do. This woman actually wanted him to work hard the first time they met. The rebels led by Jiang Zilan are also well known in Binchuan City. Although they are not talented, they are definitely not all fakes. But in this situation, Zhujiangshi still came to GLUO for help, and the difficulty of the problem is not simple. Zhujiangshi, I'm sorry, I have limited ability. GLUO waved his hand and refused directly, and he didn't even think about joining Jiang Zilan's organization. Good guy. Zhujiangshi has a sharp vision. When he first met him, he saw that he was a talent. Working under such a good vision, you can't be lazy and slip up. You can't do it. GLUO, don't rush to refuse. I'll tell you directly. I want to ask you to help save someone. Her name is Ning Zinan, and she was just captured a few days ago. Save people. Ning Zinan? GLUO didn't intend to get involved, but when he heard Ning Zinan's name, he was dumbfounded. This is too coincidental. What's going on? How come he got the news of Ning Zinan just after he arrived in Binchuan City? Moreover, Ning Zinan was captured by someone, and GLUO was just asked to save her. Did Fu Xining know the situation of Ning Zinan in advance, and also wanted him to work hard to save people? GLUO, don't worry, I don't plan to let you fight alone, you just need to be a support. Assist who? GLUO frowned. He had changed his mind. Ning Zinan was still very important. He had to save her. Assist Zingzaki Zinan. What? GLUO thought he had heard it wrong. Zingzaki Zinan was the girl who was just put into the sack. He tore her out of the sack with his own hands. GLUO, to be honest, the financial backer behind us is Huatang Group, and they asked us to help Ning Zinan. Seeing GLUO's attitude soften, Zhujiangshi no longer concealed it and told him everything that was left. The previous head of Huatang Chamber of Commerce was named Crossing Kizhen. She is Crossing Kizhen's sister and has always been supporting us. The task of rescuing Ning Xinyan was given to us by Crossing Kizhen, and our position is actually to assist and protect. Assist Crossing Kizhen in rescuing people and protect her as the first priority. Crossing Xinyan planned to pretend to be kidnapped and then be taken to the secret base of the Great God's office. After that, she looked for opportunities to cause chaos and find a way to rescue Xinyan. But what we didn't expect was that you suddenly appeared. Zhujiangshi did not blame Gluo for doing good things. Everything was originally under their control, but Gluo's sudden appearance and Jiang Zilan's safety made the plan completely changed and became what it is now. I see. Gluo's previous doubts were basically solved here. Since crossing Xinyan is the eldest daughter of Huatang Group, with a huge amount of resources piled up, she can't be weak. She must be a role of pretending to be a pig and eating a tiger. As for why the Huatang Chamber of Commerce attaches so much importance to Ning Xinyan, nonsense. Who is Ning Xinyan's sister Ning Yiking, the star spirit of this world, a super invincible great scientist? Ning Yiking's sister. Just these 6 words. No matter how much investment and risk, it is worth it. Zhujiangshi, you found me. What exactly do you want me to do? Gluo was already inclined to accept Zhujiangshi's task. Ning Xinyan's existence can be said to be the fulcrum of his next goal in this world, and he must save her. It's very simple. You replace Xinyan and become a pretend research body, and then Xinyan attacks from the dark. What about you? Gluo heard that Zhujiangshi said that she would send someone to help Xinyan, but in the end, she only sent herself. The loss tonight is too great, and Miss Xinyan just asked us not to get involved more. Zhujiangshi rubbed her eyes, looking a little tired. So many things happened tonight, and their perfect 2-line operation plan collapsed across the board. It was really uncomfortable to be in such a state. Gluo, I know it's too much to ask you to do such a dangerous thing, but my intuition is very accurate. I feel you can do it. Don't flatter me. Although Gluo rejected Zhujiangshi's flattery, he did not immediately say no. His original talent has become immortality, and the power of eternal life means that no matter what happens, no matter what he encounters, he will never die, and it is impossible for him to die. Chapter 531 Request. Zhujiangshi, if I help you, what's the benefit? Although Gluo did not give a positive answer, his question at this time was undoubtedly the best hint. As long as you tell us, we will try our best to do it. How much money do you want? What resources do you want? Zhujiangshi was not a stingy person. After all, it was a task of Huatang Group, and the final reward for Gluo would be paid by that end. She was not afraid of Gluo's high price, but she was afraid that he would not bid. Forget it. I haven't thought about it yet. I'll ask you when I think about it. Gluo thought for a long time, but he didn't have what he wanted. He was going to work hard anyway, and he was not interested in external things like money. No problem. In addition, after this incident, your status in the organization is equal to mine and Jiang Zilan's. Zhujiangshi said this very seriously. Gluo turned his head and found that Zhujiangshi was not making big promises. Gluo, we will be incorporated into Huatang Group soon. There will definitely be changes in the upper echelons. After all, I invited you. It will be good for us to let you be in the upper echelons. Yes. Gluo instantly understood what Zhujiangshi meant. She was actually doing a favor, not cutting flesh as the wording suggests. For Jiang Zilan and Zhujiangshi, this matter was a token of allegiance and a dividing line. From now on, they will leave the resistance army and join Huatang Group. Since they are joining others, it is certain that their positions will be changed and they will be airdropped as leaders. In this case, Gluo belongs to the new upper echelons and will not affect them. On the other hand, Gluo took such a big risk in rescuing Ning Xinyan. It is impossible for Huatang Group to have no response. That's it. Gluo nodded and didn't say more on this topic. Zhujiangshi nodded and didn't know what to say for a while. Beep, beep, beep. With a reminder sound, the car entered a luxuriously decorated hotel. The underground parking lot was empty and looked like it was reserved. Gluo followed the local customs and followed Zhujiangshi to the 20th floor from the elevator. Then the two walked into a suite. A girl named Xinyan was sitting quietly on the sofa. At this time, the girl had woken up. Her graceful figure attracted people's attention, but the most impressive thing was her pair of purple eyes. My lord. I'm just an ordinary person. I just want to live. Just treat me as a dog. In the light of the crystal lamp, a middle-aged man with a fierce face knelt on the ground, and he didn't dare to care about the dirt on his expensive suit. Mikora Hirono, do you know what you did? Zingzaki Zinan's indifference was very different from Zujdangsha's indifference. Zujdangsha habitually pretended to be indifferent because of her charming appearance, while Zingzaki Zinan's indifference was indeed cold from the heart. The girl of extraordinary origin sat on the sofa, and her eyes did not even look at Kyan Hirono, but she frightened the gangster boss, and trembled all over. I understand. Mikora Hirono collapsed on the ground, thinking about the contempt and killing of ordinary people by the realm warriors. He was completely frightened. It's good that you understand. Hoshizaki Erita walked to Mikora Hirono's side, looked down at his crawling figure, with no emotion on his face. Mikora Hirono, I can stop pursuing your design and malice towards me. But as a price, I have some ideas that you need to do. If you do well, we will protect you. But if you want to betray or mess up the plan, you and your whole family will become corpses wherever you go. Understand? I understand. Mikora Hirono seemed to see the hope of life, nodding and bowing, almost kneeling down to kowtow. Then go and prepare. Tell the Grand Imperial Court that, although you didn't catch me, you found another perfect body, and send it to them immediately. Yes, Lord Hoshizaki Erita. I will definitely get things done. Mikora Hirono stood up, bowed to Hoshizaki Erita again, and walked out in a panic. Click, the sound of the door closing rang out, and the three people in the room fell silent. Miss Zingzaki, this is GLUO. He is willing to sneak in for you. Zujdangsha didn't seem to be used to communicating with Zingzaki Zinan, so she didn't say anything. After introducing GLUO looked up and looked at Zingzaki Zinan and nodded. My name is GLUO, and I'm honored to participate in the operation to rescue Ning Zinan. Aren't you afraid? Zingzaki Zinan walked back to the sofa, sat down sideways facing GLUO, and then made a gesture of invitation for GLUO and the other person to sit down. How can I not be afraid? But is it useful to be afraid? GLUO's acting skills burst out. He smiled self-deprecatingly and sat on the sofa. It seems that GLUO is a person who is desperate for profit. Zingzaki Zinan nodded thoughtfully and gave GLUO a guarantee. GLUO, don't worry, even if you die, the reward promised to you will not be reduced by a penny. That's fine. GLUO nodded decisively, as if he had talked with Zujdangsha for long enough, and had the most satisfactory answer. Zujdangsha, who was sitting on the side, couldn't help but raise an eyebrow at GLUO's attitude. Did GLUO fall for Zingzaki Erita? Why was his attitude completely different from just now? What does it mean? Although Zingzaki Erita is indeed very beautiful, she is not that bad, right? Why is she treated so differently? GLUO, your mission is very simple. Just be sent to the secret base of the Great God's office and make some noise. Zingzaki Erita put a silver pocket watch on the table and pushed it in front of GLUO. This is a miniature superwave magnetic bomb that can paralyze electricity, communications, and monitoring facilities. You just need to activate it. Understood. GLUO took the pocket watch in his hand, opened the lid, and took a look. Zingzaki Erita explained to him how to use it, and GLUO wrote it down carefully. Miss Zingzaki, I have no problem with this. Just call me Zingzaki Erita. Zinki Zinan's eyes finally left GLUO. She sat on the chair and looked at the already dark night. GLUO, you are likely to die this time. I can't promise anything, but I will do my best to keep you alive. However, if you die, do you have any wishes left? My sister, I hope you can take good care of her. GLUO patted crossing Ayuo in his arms. Zinki Zinan had noticed this a long time ago and didn't say anything more. I promise, I will do my best to take care of her. That's it. GLUO knew that he couldn't die, so he didn't care about getting involved in danger. Instead, it was Zinki Zinan who felt very guilty about GLUO. The original plan was that she would be caught and then find a way to create a riot and find Ning Zinan. But when the plan was implemented, an accident happened. At this point, Zinki Zen said that he would not let her take the risk personally, so he could only find someone to replace her. Chapter 532 Boshi Hospital. By the way, Zinki's in iron. Who is the person who took Ning's in iron away? I just seemed to hear. Daiga Shisho? Yes, it's Daiga Shisho. The silver-haired girl nodded heavily, her voice a little suppressed. Daiga Shisho. The front is the National Institute of Genmei, but later the Changshan Group paid a large price to join the government to establish and reform the Daiga Shisho. Because it is a government research institute, it is difficult to be effective against it on the surface, and the Changshan Group can easily crush things in secret. Over the years, the development of the Changshan Group has been terrible. First, it relied on capital to corrupt government officials, and then used various means to win over a large number of people, and there are countless secret bases. Even if Zinki Zilan needed GLUO to sneak in first, she had no intention of hiding the danger. She could almost say that she told GLUO very clearly that joining this action was not only against the Changshan Group, but also fighting against the entire government. Officials and businessmen collude to the point of not concealing it. That's really a bit scary. Capitalist countries are really amazing. GLUO had heard of this situation before, but he really didn't expect that the city government of Hamakura had become so corrupt. The entire country was rotten. National research institutes can cooperate with capital groups, and it can even be said to be cooperation, but in fact, they are simply sold at a good price. GLUO, are you sure you won't change your decision? Zingzaki Zilan looked at GLUO, who was the same age as herself, and couldn't help but lowered her head uncomfortably. Of course, this is what I should do. GLUO put crossing RUO in his arms into Zujdangsha's arms, and gave her a pleading look. Zujdangsha nodded heavily, as if making a vow. GLUO, don't worry, I will take good care of her. That's enough. GLUO can be said to be the one with the least pressure among the three. Anyway, he will be fine no matter what. At this time, the night outside the window was deep, like a giant beast waiting to eat. The atmosphere between the three people stagnated and fell silent, until the knock on the door sounded again, and a man named Mikoa Hirono walked in. Ms. Shizuki, everything is ready. Then, let's start. Shizuki Erita suddenly stood up from the sofa, like a sharp blade out of its sheath, exuding a chilling murderous aura. The war began. The night sky stretches endlessly, the low-lying mountains lie silently on the ground, the hustle and bustle of the city gradually recedes with the scarcity of life, and the suburban roads are so quiet that it makes people panic. The car with its headlights turned on flew over the landscape of weeds in the dark, looking like a firefly rushing on its way frantically. Ms. Shizuki Erita, we are almost at Boshi Hospital. Do you want me to? No need. The purple-eyed girl curled up in a corner of the back seat of the car, and her answer was still cold. Oh. There was a long and narrow scar on the side of the cheek of Hirono Mikoa, who was driving. His face, which should have looked very ferocious, was now full of timidity. You can pretend that you know nothing, just like before. Just pretend that you have never seen me. Shizuki Erita looked up at the vague darkness outside the window. Her voice sounded calm and indifferent. She gently touched the forehead of GLUO who was sleeping beside her, and then began to open the window of the back seat. Mikoa Hirono, as long as you don't mess up, and don't do unnecessary things, they won't suspect you, and your life will not be in danger. But if there is a loophole in my plan, even if the Great God's office lets you go, I will kill you. Don't worry, Miss Shizuki Erita, I will definitely act well. Mikoa Hirono saw the purple-eyed girl getting up from the rearview mirror, and slowed down the car unnaturally. The young lady did not react much. She just looked back at the sleeping GLUO, then turned over, and jumped out of the car, disappearing in the weeds in the suburbs in the blink of an eye. It's really fatal. Mikoa Hirono looked back cautiously, and the wind that poured in from the car window made him shiver. The boss, who was caught in the darkness, couldn't help but take another look at the young man, who was still sleeping soundly. Then he rolled up the car window and picked up the speed that had been reduced. Far away from the city's suburbs, it was difficult to see any lights, but the Boshi hospital at the front of the road was shining like a beacon. This strangely located hospital is actually not open to the public. It mainly undertakes the physical management of some wealthy people, officials, and celebrities. To put it bluntly, it is a comprehensive examination and scientific maintenance. In a way, its treatment methods are also first class. It is said that many celebrities' various difficult and complicated diseases have been perfectly solved here. Mikao Hirono began to slow down when he approached Boshi Hospital. His mobile phone rang again when he reached the usual distance. After confirming his message in code, the call was quickly hung up, and the huge iron door outside the hospital began to slowly open. Mikao Hirono turned the car into the underground and stopped at an emergency elevator. "Hello. I just found a fine body and sent it to you." Mikao Hirono opened the car window, and the 4 people in white coats and masks ignored him as usual, but opened the back door and began to confirm GLUO's identity. Yes, the data is correct. The people whose faces were covered by masks lifted GLUO out of the car and put him on the operating cart together. Then a small bag was thrown on the front seat. "We have received the patient. We will treat him. You can leave." "Okay, thank you for your help." Mikao Hirono nodded flatteringly and hurriedly started the car and started driving out. For every qualified body delivered, Boshi Hospital would give him 100,000, and the high quality body would be paid 10 times more. 1 million, all settled in cash. It was so easy to make money from these trips. This time, the money made was actually hotter than killing people. Mikao Hirono drove out of the underground garage and suddenly remembered the girl with purple eyes. The horror of feeling on the verge of death just by being stared at really made his heart tremble. Mikao Hirono, whose mind was in a mess of fear, drove the car slowly away from Boshi Hospital and then quickly drove into the dark night without looking back. GLUO. In the dark night, Zinki-san looked at the door of Boshi Hospital that closed again, took a deep breath, rubbed his hands, took out the prepared computer, and began to confirm GLUO's location. Although Huatang Group looked like a giant beast to ordinary people, compared with Changshan Group, Huatang Group was as immature as a child. Changshan Group, which almost controlled the entire government, had no ability and influence that could be judged. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 533, Longship 1000 Miles. At this moment, although Zinki-san wanted to rescue Ning-san, she also understood that Huatang Group must not fall, because it was founded by her sister and is the hope for the future of mankind. Underground. Zinki-san looked at GLUO's coordinates and had a rough estimate of Boshi Hospital in her mind. At the same time, GLUO, who was transported underground, also received an extremely warm welcome. Drive Changchuan ordered that this exquisite body be sent to him immediately once it is delivered, and there is no need for a physical examination. Okay. By the way, inject 3 times the amount of body paralysis drug. This body has high ability. Hurry up. Dr. Changchuan has been waiting for a long time. Understood. We will speed up immediately. Noisy sounds gathered in the ears, and the sound of the machine was sometimes high and sometimes low. GLUO tried to wake up in a half-awake state, but the drowsiness in his brain could not disappear. Dung. 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 GLUO, who was completely empty-headed, suddenly felt his heart begin to beat violently. The tremor, as if the blood in his body was rushing, made him lose all his senses. But as his heart beat violently, his consciousness gradually became clear, even more clear than ever. The movement of the surgical cart under him continued. GLUO closed his eyes and dared not reveal the fact that he had woken up. The person pushing him kept reporting the situation on the intercom. The sound of mechanical doors opening one after another kept ringing. GLUO felt that he was transported to a room with slightly dim lights, and then his body was lifted and placed on a hard platform. Drive Changchuan, the person has confirmed. GLUO age: 18 years old, height 178 centimeters, weight 70 kilograms, consistent with the target. Okay, you can leave. The male voice that replied was very soft, sounding like a female voice with excessive male hormone secretion. Understood. The 4 men who pushed GLUO all the way answered at the same time and quickly left the room. There were only two men left in the seemingly large room. Gluo, who pretended to be unconscious, carefully kept his breathing steady. He was only conscious now, but in fact, some paralysis still remained in his body, so he needed to wait a little longer. Gluo, don't pretend, you're awake now. Slow footsteps came to Gluo's side. The soft male voice was not cold at all, but rather had the pleasure of meeting a good friend. The heartbeat of a person is different when they are in a coma and when they are awake, especially Gluo. You are so nervous. Cough. Gluo coughed lightly and slowly opened his eyes. The light in the room was very soft, and he saw everything without having to adapt. This room was unusually empty. There was nothing in the room of more than 100 square meters, except the platform where he was laying. 3 of the 4 walls of the room were completely smooth metal. The tight gaps indicated that there seemed to be some machines hidden in the wall, but nothing could be seen from the outside. The only glass wall was very huge, and the transparent glass window could clearly see the aisle. Conversely, everything in the room could not be hidden from the outside. There is also a small enclosure in the corner of the room, with the word toilet written on it. Gluo, don't be nervous. My name is Changchun Kyanli. You can also call me Dr. Changchun. It seems that the man walked into Gluo's sight only after Gluo had seen everything in the room. The man in the white coat was very feminine, and his body was a little short and thin. The smile on his face was not compelling, and he looked like a classmate who was easy to bully. Gluo, I don't know what you have experienced before. If my subordinates did something bad to you, I apologize to you on his behalf. The feminine man looked at Gluo's face very carefully, taking in all the expressions on his face. Huh, you don't seem surprised. Gluo's heartbeat trembled when he heard the man's revelation. He quickly calmed down and made a look of contempt and resentment on his face. What on earth do you want to do to me? You sissy who looks like a little submissive, just say what you want to do. Don't pretend to be so kind. No matter whether I live or die, I will not let you go, even if I become a ghost in the future. Oh, not bad. I like your character. You have to admit that you are short. You have to stand firm when you are beaten, and you will get everything back in the future. Changchun Kyanli was not unhappy because of Gluo's insults. Instead, he observed Gluo with a smile. The slightly obsessed look made Gluo tremble all over and felt a chill of chastity crisis. Don't get me wrong. I won't do anything bad to you. I just work hard to make you a warrior who surpasses the humans of the old era. Warrior in the realm of God. Warrior in the realm of God. What does that mean? Gluo narrowed his eyes, trying his best not to let Changchun Kyanli see his emotions, trying to dig out some secrets. Gluo, everyone in this world has adaptability to source force, but everyone has different amounts, so the source force adaptability index evaluation mechanism comes into being. Changchun Kyanli laughed happily. He looked at Gluo's face and lowered his voice slightly. But this is very unfair. Human beings should be born equal. Why should we be divided into different levels just because of different source force adaptability? This is very excessive. Gluo pursed his lips, held his breath, did not answer Changchun Kyanli's words, but he vaguely understood it in his heart. So, I want to save humanity. I want to make humanity fair. Let everyone have equal chances to become a martial artist. Changchun Kyanli looked at Gluo with satisfaction. He slowly put his hand into the pocket of his white coat, and the words in his mouth seemed to be whispering. My research has been failing all the time. No one believes in me. No one gives me this opportunity. But now, everything is different. Changchun Kyanli took his hand out of his pocket and slowly spread his palm in front of Gluo. A crystal like a glass marble shone in his hand. And inside the glass marble, the dark and dirty source power like a quagmire is constantly flowing, like a living creature. I call it the blood of God, the divine object that changes the fate of mankind under the light. Changchun Kyanli's mouth opened with an ugly smile, as if a fanatic was praising his god. You. Gluo looked at the smile on the feminine man's face and couldn't help but want to get up and punch him, but the paralysis of his body made him only able to slightly raise his upper body, and then he collapsed on the platform and couldn't move. God's blood of this quality is an extremely rare high-end product. I only have one. Changchun Kyanli's short and thin body slowly leaned down. his eyes fixed on Gluo's angry expression, and the expression on his face suddenly became cold. Chapter 534 Blood of God. Gluo, the blood of God will select people's destiny and divide the weak from the strong. What about you? The most perfect body I have ever seen. Chang'e and Qianli looked at Gluo meaningfully and began to operate the instrument on his left wrist with his right hand. The metal floor next to the platform where Gluo was lying suddenly turned over, and a metal table rose from the ground. Various beakers and instruments were placed on the table. Chang'e and Qianli walked to the side of the table and began to operate skillfully. The blood of God is a combination of source power and some strange energy. It contains some active energy like a virus. As long as it enters the body of a lower life form, it will quickly transform and strengthen, just like a person moving into a new home, cleaning up the house, decorating it, and then buying new furniture. Chang'e and Qianli put the dirty black glass marbles into the beaker, and then added a bunch of materials. The glass marbles wrapped in the dirty black source power quickly melted, and the energy inside also leaked out. The highest quality of God's blood, plus your perfect body. Gluo, I gave you the best conditions. Don't let me down. Chang'e and Qianli spoke in a persuasive tone, like a teacher giving a lecture, but his behavior was really bad. The dozen or so materials in the beaker were mixed together. The feminine man shook the beaker, and the god's blood quickly melted at a speed visible to the naked eye. Chang'e and Qianli used a huge syringe to carefully suck out all the mixed liquids, and once again turned to look at Gluo, who was limp on the platform, with an obsessed look, as if looking at a perfect work of art. Come on Gluo, the more powerful the transformation, the more dangerous it is. Once you lose to the virus, you will completely lose yourself, and become a monster that only knows how to devour flesh and blood. There are too many such things in my laboratory. Don't let me down. Chang'e and Qianli. Gluo clenched his fists tightly and struggled to get up, but the paralysis of his body made him give up the idea of fighting desperately. Yes. Just like now. Suffer. Howl. Be angry. Go crazy. Turn all your emotions into strength to fight against the blood of God. Then surpass the fate of mankind in one breath. Chang'e and Qianli's laughter tended to be crazy. He grabbed Gluo's arm and injected the mixture in the thick syringe into Gluo's veins in one breath. Failure means death. You can only survive if you struggle. This is the fate of mankind. No one can resist. Asshole. Gluo could clearly feel a violent heat flow through his body. His heart beat faster and faster, as if it had turned into an old diesel engine running wildly. Soon, Gluo's brain was full of heat like a volcano. His skin turned red in an instant, and his muscles and bones began to tremble wildly. Gluo gritted his teeth, but the roar of the beast burst out from his throat. I will kill you. Come on, come on. I'll wait for you. I'll wait for you. Chang'e and Qianli looked at Gluo's whole body shaking crazily, his limbs twitching and moving, and the smile on his face became even stronger. Gluo's eyes gradually turned blood red, and his piercing roar was like a beast fighting for its life. Gluo, you have to come on. Do you know that a few days ago, there was a body similar to yours? Her name was Ningxinan. I injected her with divine blood that was slightly worse than yours. Guess what was the result? Chang'e and Qianli looked at Gluo's even greater struggle and roar, and became more and more excited. His face was flushed, and he looked so happy. His voice began to deepen, and every word in his words was very clear. She died, not because she failed to fight against the blood of God, but because she committed suicide when she was about to succeed. It's really such a pity. You are not human. Gluo was almost driven crazy by the numbness and pain all over his body, but the words spoken by Chang'e and Qianli were clearly transmitted to his mind. He imagined the pain that Ningxinan had felt, and a will to empathize with the pain burst out in his body. Gluo was like a burning star. His mind completely gave up the senses of his body, just wanting to move, to kill the demon in front of him. Gluo, it's really such a pity. She could have been my best creation, but she chose to die. It's really disappointing. But you are different. You can surpass her. Chang'e and Qianli was already excited to the point of confusion. He waved his hands, as if describing the scene at that time, and looked like a madman directing monkeys to dance. You, these beasts. GLUO didn't know where he got the strength from. He might really be crazy. The belief of killing the person in front of him pushed his body to move, but the corruption of the blood of God still made him extremely weak. It is a sin to let innocent people die. No matter whose sin it is, it must be repaid. GLUO, whose skin was red, stood up from the platform and rushed to Changcho and Qianli. He clenched his fist and swung it up from bottom to top. This punch will smash your brain. Bang. It's great. GLUO, even though he was corroded by the blood of God, the punch that GLUO burst out still exceeded the limit of human beings. But the thin Changcho and Qianli just laughed mockingly. He stood in place and easily caught GLUO's swift punch with one hand, without moving his body at all. I'm also a god-given who has absorbed the blood of God. You are still far away. Changcho and Qianli smiled at GLUO's left fist that was raised again. His body remained motionless. With a twist of his left hand, GLUO's body fell down without any resistance. Raise your leg, kick forward. Boom. GLUO felt as if he was hit by a truck and fell against the metal wall without any resistance. He wanted to stand up immediately, but the pain and numbness in his body broke out again, and the burning pain completely overwhelmed all his thoughts. Oh, it seems that it has been successful. As expected, you have to watch animals outside the cage, and you have to deal with the noise of the little rabbits in the cage. Changcho and Qianli did not care about GLUO's behavior. He looked at GLUO, who was trembling in pain again on the ground, whistled happily, turned around and walked out of the opened mechanical door, and then the thick metal door closed again, and the gap was so small that even hair could not be inserted. Come on, Changcho and Qianli stood outside the floor-to-ceiling glass wall and cheered. He happily watched GLUO inside survive waves of pain, and began to stabilize after nearly half an hour. Arsehole. After waking up again, GLUO did not hesitate at all. He took out the pocket watch hidden in his armpits and pressed the start button hard. The next moment the surging magnetic waves overflowed from the pocket watch. Chapter 535. Raging. Dr. Changchun. It's bad. The base is under attack by an electromagnetic bomb. A man wearing a mask hurried over. He quickly ran to Changcho and Qianli and didn't even look at GLUO in the cage. The main power interface is also damaged. It is now powered by a generator, but there are intruders attacking the main control room. Then solve it. What are the hundreds of garrisons in the institute doing? Changcho and Qianli looked at GLUO's miserable appearance with interest and didn't worry too much about the intruder. Without a strong attack warning, it's just a few bugs coming in. It can be solved very easily. No, more than 1/3 of the guards have been killed. The masked man hesitated and said in a low voice, originally, there was only one intruder, and we didn't care, but we didn't expect it to break the supervision cage, and as a result, all the failed products in the 3 areas of U, T, and F were released. What's even more weird is that those monsters didn't attack her, so the intruder rushed all the way in, and the guards were restrained by the monsters, and couldn't stop her at all. Now, the intruder has passed through area D and is heading towards the main control area. What's even more troublesome is that areas U, T, F, and C are already full of monsters. Once an invader reaches the main control room and opens all the closed doors, all the monsters will be released. By then, even if the invader is killed, the released monsters may. In that case, will the failed products in the research institute run around outside? Changcho and Qian Sato chuckled and nodded. There was no anxiety in her expression. Instead, it could be said that she had a feeling of expectation coming true. The person who came, is it for you? Changcho and Qianli looked at GLUO, who was sleeping inside the glass wall, and a smile of joy and expectation slowly appeared on his face. The silver-white steel supported the hollowed-out earth. The unusually wide underground space was deserted. Most of the bright lights were broken. The blood on the walls was like smashed tomatoes. Broken limbs mixed with blood plasma, splattering and flowing everywhere. The wails of humans and the roars of monsters kept echoing in the passage. The road was obviously quiet and deserted, but it made people feel a creepy sense of panic. The girl with purple eyes took steps forward in the mixed shadows, followed by a dark and terrified researcher. The researcher without glasses squinted his eyes, bent over, and walked forward cautiously. The bloody scene around him made him tremble all over, but if he turned around and ran away, he would obviously be killed by the invaders in front of him. Are you sure that there is no one named Ningsin among the people being held here? Hoshizaki Erita, who was walking in front, suddenly stopped, then turned around and stared at the researcher's eyes. The man who was stared at by the purple eyes quickly shook his head and did not dare to hesitate in his answer. No, absolutely not. I'm responsible for managing the experimental records. I can't ignore it. Is there something hidden? No. This place is not an important place. There is nothing to hide, so. The researcher waved his hands nervously, not daring to say the most terrifying possibility. After Hoshizaki Erita finally gave up staring at him, he breathed a sigh of relief. The exit of Area D is in front, and after a passage is the main control room. All the information and data of the entire base is there. If you want to know anything, you can go and check it out. The purple-eyed girl did not reply. She just turned around and took another step. The distance along the corridor gradually became quiet. The roars of wild beasts and the chaotic gunshots seemed to strangle the two people by the throat. The remaining vitality of all began to thin out. Area D of the base experiment was not very complicated. Hoshizaki Erita was observing the surroundings while guarding against attacks. Most of the surrounding laboratories were empty, and there were no monsters that she needed to release. But after many empty rooms had been swept through, a huge laboratory with dark glass was isolated on one side of the corridor. The grey-black glass was 2 layers thicker than that of ordinary laboratories, and the space occupied was more than 3 times that of ordinary laboratories. There was even a special sealed gate outside the floor-to-ceiling glass. At this time, there were messy bloodstains on the combination lock that controlled the laboratory. Obviously, a researcher was attacked when he was about to close the gate and failed to complete what he wanted to do. What is being held here? Hoshizaki Erita felt a vigorous vitality in the laboratory not far away, frowned slightly, and then walked over slowly step by step. The color of the special glass was too dark, and under normal circumstances, one could not see what was inside. No, don't. The researcher's eyes widened instantly when he found that the gate was not closed. He reflexively took 2 steps back, but immediately stopped the idea of escaping and just said in panic, "This is the only air-level dangerous creature in our research institute. It mutated during normal transformation, and the result was more powerful than expected. That time it slaughtered all the mutated creatures and researchers in Area D. It was only by relying on the sealed gate of the area that it successfully prevented it from destroying the entire laboratory." Oh, what creature? Hoshizaki Erita narrowed his eyes with interest and placed his right hand on the grey-black floor-to-ceiling glass. "No, don't. I'll die. I'll really die." Seeing Hoshizaki Erita's actions, the researcher shouted loudly, as if he had been heartbroken. He rushed over to stop the girl's actions, but Hoshizaki Erita didn't even look back. She just waved her left hand backwards and directly knocked the weak researcher out. "You want to come out?" Hoshizaki Erita murmured softly, her expression still cold. She put her right hand flat on the glass and raised it up, and her white right palm suddenly lit up with purple lightning. Crack. In the power of thunder, the 1-meter thick glass wall began to shatter with Hoshizaki Erita's palm as the center, as if it was a glacier that was broken open by a giant ship. The cracks in the broken glass showed the color of broken ice and quickly extended to the entire wall. Kala, the harsh shattering sound continued, and after the glass wall was full of cracks, Hoshizaki Erita moved her palm away and took a few steps back. The male researcher at the side screamed as if he saw a ghost. He covered his stomach and tried to get up from the ground, but the pain in his body made him fall to the ground again. Bang! A huge figure, like a charging chariot, instantly smashed the broken glass wall and rushed out of the laboratory violently. It seemed like a sleeper who was awakened and rushed directly to the side of the male researcher. Its huge claws smashed his head with a bang, and then it mashed the body of the male researcher frantically, smashing the red and white things everywhere until the body was broken into pieces and became a squashed caterpillar. Chapter 536, Gratitude and Revenge. AWW. The released monster gradually stopped venting and turned to stare at Zinzaki Shinan. This is a huge white polar bear. Its body length is more than 20 meters, dozens of patterns flashing a strange red on its body, and its shoulder height is more than 8 meters, making its huge head look down at the short Zingzakishinan. This bear has surpassed the size of an ordinary elephant. It slowly arched its waist, as if it would tear the tiny human in front of it to pieces in the next moment, but an inexplicable sense of fear and pressure made it not take the initiative to attack, but just maintain a threatening posture. If you want to get out, keep going forward. Zingzakishinan didn't care about the pressure brought by the huge power of the mutant polar bear. The purple-eyed girl just stepped aside and pointed her finger in the direction of the main control room. The giant bear seemed to understand what Zingzakishinan meant. It roared in a low voice. Its body was agitated for a few times, and finally it raised its steps and rushed to the front of the passage. In this way, there will be no more obstacles. Zingzakishinan looked at the polar bear rushing forward like an armored vehicle, and her face did not show a happy expression. She turned around and looked at the body that turned into a meat pie on the ground, took a deep breath, and then stepped forward. Originally, she had released hundreds of mutant monsters in the laboratory, and the human defense ability was gradually strained. In addition, the giant sealed gates in several areas were destroyed and opened by her. The wave of monsters swept all the humans that could be seen. The defense ability of this base was no longer enough to eliminate this disaster. At this time, the addition of the giant polar bear became the last straw that broke the camel's back. The gunshots of human counterattacks became less and less, and the wailing before death became more and more piercing. When Zingzakishinan completely left Area D, the gates blocking the area had become tattered, and the passage leading to the main control room was in a mess. The metal ground was full of strange mutant monsters and broken human bodies. The use of source crystal guns did not prevent the fall of this place. The resentment towards humans and the desire to kill made the monsters break through here and rush towards the more complicated front. Death that is not worthy of pity. Zingzakishinan looked at the scene in front of her indifferently and slowly left the passage, and the door of the base's main control room also appeared in front of her. It was a round door more than 2 meters high, with monster corpses piled up in front of the door, and the path leading to other areas was full of blood, which showed that many monsters were led away. At this time, there was only a male figure isolated in front of the door of the main control room. He was covered with wounds, his flesh was rolling white, and one of his eyes was blind. The flowing blood directly dyed half of his cheek red. The man's body was very strong and tall, and he looked like a soldier. He stood there straight and didn't speak until Zingzakishinan walked not far in front of him. Long time no see. Miss Zinky, Uncle Jeng. Zingzakishinan stood in front of the man, and her indifferent cheeks collapsed for the first time. She bit her lower lip, and her purple eyes trembled. Ha Jengbi, I didn't expect to see you here. Why? You want to betray me? I just asked you to protect Ningxin. Why did you? I'm sorry, I'm no longer qualified to call you miss. The man called Jengbi by Zingzakishinan quickly bent down and bowed 90 degrees. His muscles were tense, but his face was still expressionless. Since I chose to protect my wife and daughter, I no longer have the qualifications to stand in front of you. At this moment, I'm only standing here as a gatekeeper. I'm sorry, I can't retreat. Jengbi's remaining eye stared at Zingzakishinan, and complex emotions such as sadness, powerlessness, regret, and self-blame piled up deeply, like a barrier blocking the expectations of the purple-eyed girl. Zingzakishinan, I owe you and Ningxin, and I can only pay it back in the next life. What do you owe me? Zingzakishinan clenched her fists. Her teeth were white in her smile. Tears slid down her cheeks, and the anger and pain of being betrayed surrounded the girl. From the time my sister saved you, it has been 10 years in total, and we have never treated you unfairly. You can betray me, but as a human being, what qualifications do you have to stand in my way? Zingzakishinan stomped on the ground suddenly, and the muffled sound of steel was heavy and oppressive. The girl with purple eyes moved forward again, and the brilliance of the source of thunder seemed to be burning with flames. Now, you choose to leave this city, the farther the better, and I will not pursue it anymore. The girl with purple eyes roared with all her might. She looked at the man in front of her and lowered his head, but he remained silent, as if he was carrying all the sins on his shoulders and taking them to hell. Speak. Why not? Zingzakizinan's cheeks were once again covered with deep coldness. She reached out to wipe away the tears on her face and assumed a very ordinary battle preparation posture. Since you don't say, I won't ask. Uncle Jeng, I'll call you uncle for the last time. After all, I'm going to kill you. Perhaps for me, death is a kind of relief. The tough man stood straight, as if he were a ruler. He slowly raised his head and looked at the girl who was betrayed by him. His body seemed to collapse like a cramp. The wounds all over his body were pulled apart in the shallow healing. The bloody smell was even stronger on him. Miss, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I couldn't protect your best friend. I'm sorry. All I have is cowardice and humility. I'm really sorry. Zhengbi pinched his forehead with his right hand, and his voice was filled with heavy pain. The tide of mutant beasts almost killed him. If a soldier had not led away the giant bear that appeared at the end, he might not have had the chance to see Ningxinan again. But now he finally saw her again, the girl he had been trying to see, even if he didn't die. But now it seems that his life is a stain of his betrayal. Zhengbi, you are a man. Don't be so fucking timid. Either leave or die here. Zingzakizinan cried as she watched the man who had been with her for 10 years and was like her own uncle. The resentment of betrayal in her heart was relieved a lot. Speak the fuck up. You are like this. How can I hate you? Zingzakizinan cursed for the first time in her life. She rushed to Zhengbi and grabbed his collar. The wounded man knelt on the ground limply. He was blind in one eye, but his hand was covering the eye that could see the world. He seemed to have something choking in his throat, and every word was extremely difficult. Miss, I'm sorry, I can't tell you anything. Please leave, stay away from this city. Chapter 537, Their Respective Choices. The kneeling man seemed to have lost the breath that supported him to live. His lips and face turned pale, and his body, which had lost too much blood, was still losing vitality. Please leave here and never come back. Find a quiet place to live well. This city is too dangerous. Zhengbi raised his head, as if he had used all his strength. His only remaining eye was unusually bright. His low words seemed to be whispering, and his smile spread with a whisper. Asshole, why didn't you say anything? Such eyes. Please don't smile with relief before you die. Zingzakizinan looked at the person who had taken care of her since she was a child with tears on her face. She suddenly strangled his neck. The dying man had no strength to resist. Only the emotion of apology was left in his only eye. He was about to die. The old man who had been with him for 10 years was about to die. Zingzakizinan gritted her teeth and let out a deep roar in her throat. Her left hand suddenly exerted force and broke Zhengbi's neck with a click. I won't leave. Everyone who has anything to do with this must die. The purple-eyed girl suddenly let go of her hand, and the corpse she was holding fell to the ground with a thud. Zingzakizinan looked at the dead man with his eyes open, and tears suddenly rolled down her eyes. She bent down, closed Zhengbi's eyes, and her palm stayed on his forehead for a long time. Uncle Jeng, no matter what you have done, no matter how everything is, I forgive you. Zingzakizinan closed her eyes lightly like praying. After a long time, she stood up again, wiped her tears with both hands, and her expression became indifferent again. The purple-eyed girl stepped over the corpse on the ground and stopped in front of the steel door. Before breaking the gate, Zingzakizinan suddenly paused. Kuang Zintu, you are not really dead. Then, as the purple-eyed girl broke the door of the main control room, walked in, and began to implant a bunch of codes into the system, all the radios in the entire base sounded shrill alarms. Beep, beep, beep. Emergency evacuation should be accelerated. All the things that cannot be taken away should be destroyed immediately. Transfer of all precious bodies should be completed as soon as possible. Over-injection of coma drugs is allowed. Manually kill the mutant experimental bodies with poison gas, cut and pack the important research parts, and leave the bodies alone. The usually solemn experimental base seemed to be in an uproar at this time. Researchers were running around in a hurry. Many mutants screamed before dying one after another, and the impact on the glass wall also made the surroundings tremble. The base protection personnel also joined the ranks of assisting the retreat. Countless important data were quickly packed, and all unimportant burdens were destroyed. Oh, the first layer of defense was broken through so quickly. This invader's electronic technology is good. Compared with the various researchers running around outside, the head of this base, Changchuan Qianli, was much more leisurely. The retreat order came from him, and the rest of the things could be left to his subordinates. And now he is monitoring Ning Xin'an's breakthrough of the main control room's defenses. And by the way, he activates the base's self-destruct system. The self-destruct system has been activated and locked, and will be executed in 3 hours. Okay, Changchuan Qianli finally confirmed that it was completely locked with his fingerprints and irises, and then stretched out lazily. He didn't seem to be in a hurry at all, and his expression seemed to be very expectant. Hey, go and notify everyone to open passages number 19 to 22 leading here, and lock the rest of the passages in batches according to the maze guidance plan, and release baits, so that the mutant beasts can run around in areas other than Area A. Yes. The man who had been waiting for Changchuan Qianli's order bent down, saluted, and asked again, "Drive Changchuan, are you really not going to evacuate? It's too dangerous here. No need, just do as I say. I will stay with the body GLUO to see if we can kill the invaders, and just do your own thing. If things are impossible, I will leave before the base self-destructs." Changchuan Qianli waved his hand to let his subordinates execute the order, then leisurely turned on the music on the computer, whistled, and played Snake with great interest. Beep. Warning. The defense system of the main control room is completely paralyzed, and the intruder has begun to check confidential information. Oh, a little slower than expected. Changchuan Qianli glanced at the clock. It took Ning Xin'an about half an hour to open the defense system of the main control room. Now the transfer outside is nearing the end, and his own plan was executed much better than expected. "Doctor, it's bad." The man who had left earlier ran over in a hurry and said very quickly, "The evacuation of the base has been completed by 95%, and the maze guidance plan has also begun to be implemented, but before the maze was completed, the polar bear with a dangerous level of A failed to guide and is now rushing here. Dr. Changchuan, evacuate quickly." Ah. The leisurely Changchuan Qianli was stunned, but there was no panic on his face. "I didn't expect that there would be a warm-up. Just think of it as an appetizer before the big meal." The short and thin Changchuan Qianli showed a very happy smile. He took off his white coat, revealing the neat suit inside, and then stepped out of the door. "Follow the original plan and speed up the evacuation. Don't stay. By the way, remember to lock GLUO for me. You don't have to worry about his problems, Dr. Changchuan." "Got it." The man bowed at last, and then ran quickly towards the emergency exit. "Oh, I wanted to fight this bear last time, but I was afraid of hurting the precious experimental subject. Now I finally have the chance." Changchuan Qianli walked out of his office area step by step, and walked straight towards the exit of Area A. In his spare time, he lightly tapped the controller on his wrist, and a very old song echoed throughout the base. "I can't dream of the bright moonlight, just like losing my eyes, and falling into a deserted city. Falling into a deserted city. I can't kiss the strong fragrance of flowers, just like losing my soul, and feeling lonely." Changchuan Qianli hummed softly along with his favorite tune, and casually opened a huge regional isolation gate. "I can't hear the sound of horse hooves. The world is quiet, and I can't see the way home. If you don't wake me up again, I will have to wait for the next life and travel all over the world." As the song was about to climax, Changchuan Qianli finally stepped into the last passage. He stood in the center and shouted as if he was standing on a stage cheered by thousands of people. "This song, my favorite galloping horse, is dedicated to all my friends who are still in the base and cheering for me." The loud song seemed to make the galloping beast even more violent. The giant bear with pure white fur rushed forward like an armored vehicle running at full speed. Chapter 538 Crazy Believer. At that moment, Changchuan Qianli, who was still standing in the same place, looked like a matchstick trying to stop a chariot with his arms. "I want to gallop on my horse, into your arms. Unravel the mystery of longing, the thousand-year dream." The thin man sang a song and slowly bent down. The light red smoke began to swirl around him. The airflow seemed like light smoke, the water of a gurgling stream, and also like dyed light. The smoke flowing like soft water gathered in his fists. Changchuan Qianli stepped forward and accumulated a bow step. successfully adapting to the transformation of the blood of God, and becoming a realm warrior given by God. The transformation that Changchuan Qianli received far exceeded his imagination, and this also completely changed him. I want to gallop on my horse to the endless sky, rolling down the wind and rain along the way, and raising a rainbow AWW. The song in the bass continued, and the roar of the giant bear finally approached completely. Drifting in your heart, happiness remains. A wisp of breeze, meeting in past and present life. As the song reached its final high pitch, the huge mutant bear in the field of vision rushed over fiercely. The giant beast pounced forward with its huge mouth wide open, while Changchuan Qianli murmured the unfinished song in his mouth, and only swung his fist at the last moment. The red smoke was like a storm sweeping the rain curtain, and the explosive energy hit the giant beast's jaw. The absolute collision of force and force, like thunder. Fear my god. In the main control room, where the system was locked, Zinky Zinan took out his mobile phone, glanced at the time, and silently estimated in his heart how much reaction time he had given the other party, since he broke in. Directly in front. There was no barrier between the passages, wrapped in silver white metal. The induced mutant beasts had already moved away from the most important area A of the laboratory, and the original howling of ghosts and wolves could only be heard vaguely. If they were transferred, why is GLUO still in front? Zingzaki Zilan walked forward carefully in deep doubt. She had not encountered any obstacles since she left the main control room. Obviously, either they had retreated, or there was a bigger ambush waiting for her. Aowoo aowoo aowoo. The roar of the impact and explosion mixed with the loud roar of the bear suddenly echoed in the passage. Zingzaki Zilan's body suddenly tensed up, and she hurriedly stopped and listened carefully to the sound of fighting in the distance. The two sides of the battle didn't know how long they had been fighting. Now the collision of attacks between each other was a bit slow, and the giant bear was obviously at a disadvantage, because its roar had become increasingly weak, and began to become dying. Ah. Woo woo woo. Just as Zingzaki Zilan was thinking about what to do, the giant bear suddenly let out a final high-pitched roar, and then whimpered, and lost its voice. Obviously it was heading for death, but the person fighting with it should not be intact. Zingzaki Zilan no longer hesitated, and began to rush forward. The gate at the last corner was completely open. The purple-eyed girl stepped directly onto the wall while running, turned smoothly at a 90-degree right angle, and continued to rush forward straight. The black shadows, that were originally 2 points in the distance, gradually enlarged, and the battlefield with blood splattered was finally fully reflected in the girl's purple pupils. The elephant-like giant bear had several cracked wounds all over its body. Now it was lying on the ground without a sound, and the figure standing in the middle of the passage was still smiling. The slender and thin man's outer suit was torn and stained with red blood plasma. He didn't panic when he saw Zingzaki Zilan coming, but smiled even more brightly. The man tore off his tattered suit, revealing a white shirt with only a few wrinkles and bloodstains inside. When entering the battlefield within 10 meters, Zingzaki Zilan suddenly stopped his forward steps. Although he had experienced a very fierce battle, the man in front of him was not injured at all. The so-called loss of both sides became a bubble. Hello, it's our first time to meet. I'm Nagashunchi Sato. Nagashunchi Sato, who had just finished the battle, was not out of breath. The smile on her face reminded people of the weird uncle who seduced the little girl. Tell me, where is Ning Zinan? If you can belong to me. The thin man's eyes slowly narrowed, and the tip of his tongue quickly swept across his teeth. Nagashunchi Sato, I know you. Zingzaki Zilan took a long breath, slowly clenched his fists, and prepared his body for battle. You are the disciple of the director, Ajisho, and the one who is least valued. You are ignored by the teacher, laughed at by classmates, and criticized by subordinates. You are really a clown-like scum. Ah. Yes. Unexpectedly, Chisato Nagafune agreed with Shizuki Erikawa's words. He lowered his head, his eyes staring at nowhere, and the shadow of his hair on his forehead covered his cheeks, making people think of a person possessed by an evil spirit, about to take revenge. I have been in poor health since I was a child. I have always been laughed at and ridiculed by everyone. My family is poor. In order to go to school, I have to get up early and do odd jobs after school. Even a beautiful eraser can only be obtained by stealing. Chisato Nagafune muttered to herself like a doll of an evil spirit, and her Shizuki Erikoa could not even hear clearly what Chisato Nagafune said. I worked hard to become an excellent person. I was very happy when the teacher chose me as his disciple. At first, I had good adaptability and was the most powerful among all the martial artists. The teacher's disciples all looked at me with admiration. The frail man slowly rolled up the sleeves of his shirt. When his pale body was exerting force, his bones and veins were terribly clear. Then, I don't know why my adaptability dropped sharply, and in the end, I couldn't make any progress. It has been stagnant for so many years. No matter what I did, I couldn't increase my source power even a little bit. The teacher gradually gave up on me, and those who once looked up to me began to despise me. I have doubted myself countless times, wondering if I have no hope at all, and am only worthy of living like an ant. But, my God saved me. I got the blood of God. Changchun Qianli suddenly raised his head. His face was already bulging with blood vessels. His red eyes were like a ghost, and he showed an excited smile on his face, as if he was about to split the corners of his mouth. As long as I keep researching and keep exploring the power of the blood of God, I can stand at the top again. Surpass everyone. Hashizuki Erita, I know you. Although the military and financial strength of the Huatang Chamber of Commerce cannot be considered first rate, its influence is definitely not small. That's why I invited you here. I have the blood of God and possess the power to change the world. As long as we cooperate, my research can be further improved. As long as there are enough resources, I can become a god. Omnipotent. Changfen Chisato seemed to be immersed in her own dream. Hashizuki Erita looked at Changfen Chisato's crazy appearance and felt disgusted and angry in her heart. Chapter 539 The Good Night That Cannot Be Entered. I've heard your story. Now, you should die. Zinki Zilan gritted her teeth, her body moving forward with her words. A light purple haze surrounded her body. She leaped forward quickly, and the 10-meter distance was almost instantly crossed, while Changchun Qianli was still immersed in the afterglow of her fantasy. Where is Ning Zilan? Zinki Zilan's right fist pushed straight forward, and Changchun Qianli came back to his senses at this time, but it was too late to dodge. His last move was to stretch out his left arm to block in front of his body. Kala. The shot at that moment was as if a person's bones were hit by a giant hammer, and the epidermis instantly collapsed. The force continued to move forward. The muscles were smashed, the white bones were broken, and the remaining flesh barely allowed the arm to hang on it, and the frail man was also pushed back by the impact and fell against the side wall with a bang. The purple-eyed girl did not hesitate at all. Nagashun Chisato gave her a very dangerous feeling. She leaned forward again, swung her left fist sideways, and spun her right leg to sweep across, but Nagashun Chisato, who was already prepared, was so fast that she escaped from her attack range in an instant. Ah, that's it. That's it. Fight. Die. Wailing. Only in this way can humans feel that they are alive. Nagashun Chisato held her left arm, which was about to fall, in her right hand. She did not feel pain or resentment, but shouted loudly with more joy. Hashizuki Erita, I feel your power. You got a very powerful bloodline. I want to get you. I want to study you. Nagashun Chisato's roar was like the pleasure of getting prey. The purple-eyed girl's attack never stopped, but Nagashun Chisato always avoided it easily. He held his broken left arm in his right hand and put the broken bones and flesh together. Let me show you the greatness of God's blood. Nagashun Chisato's face was ferocious, and the flesh and bones on his arm were slowly wrapped by the black source power. Then, the white skin and flesh began to grow visibly, and the bones and flesh seemed to have turned into monsters devouring each other, and the sound of chaos continued to sound. Changchun Qianli's broken arm was completely healed after more than 10 seconds, and there was no trace of injury on the wound. Immortality, don't you want it? This is a power that ordinary warriors can't have. This is the power given by God. Changchun Qianli's dark red tongue swung between her lips, and the smile on her face was torn uncontrollably. Praise my God. Go to hell. Humiliation and hatred made Zinki Zilan completely angry. The purple-eyed girl suddenly jumped up. Her right hand turned into a knife and chopped down at Changchun Qianli, who was standing still. A mere second black iron rank warrior, Who gave you the courage? Chang'e Qianli narrowed his eyes and dived forward at the same time. The light red source of power made him more than twice as fast as Xing'e Qianli. When the girl was halfway through the jump, he was already close to the girl's body. Chisato Nagafune reached forward with his throbbing right hand and grabbed Hishizuki Erita's right arm accurately. Then the slender man pulled it downward, as if he was throwing a cell phone, and threw the purple-eyed girl to the ground. Boom. Ugh. Her body hit the metal ground with a muffled sound. Hishizuki Erita felt pain all over her body, and her right arm was still being pulled. The fighting spirit in her heart made Hishizuki Erita want to stand up, but when she stood up, her left calf was suddenly kicked hard, and her body suddenly lost its center of gravity and fell forward to her knees. Just when Hishizuki Erita's body had nowhere to land, Chisato Nagafune's right fist surrounded by source power directly hit the girl's abdomen. The girl bent her body in pain, and her right hand tried her best to break free from the restraints, while her left hand insisted on clenching her fist and swinging at Chisato Nagafune. Really, you are still too weak. The inhuman blood in your body gives you enough courage, but when facing a stronger person who is far stronger than you still have no resistance. Nagakane Chisato completely ignored the left fist swung by Hishizuki Erita, but the light red source power gathered in the right fist again, and it hit Hishizuki Erita's abdomen continuously and violently. Once, 2 times, 3 times. The left fist that the girl wanted to swing completely collapsed halfway. The severe pain made her bend over. The pain of the internal organ concussion made her bite her lips. Fresh red blood spurted out of her throat, and her nose couldn't stop bleeding. After throwing more than 10 punches in a row, Nagakane Chisato finally stopped. He let go of his hand, and Hishizuki Erita collapsed directly to the ground, with blood from her mouth and nose all over her face. The girl lay on the ground, coughing violently, and tears in her eyes couldn't stop flowing. Xing'e Qianli, I'm sorry to tell you that your friend, Ningxian, is dead. She was a perfect body, but unfortunately she was too ignorant and chose suicide. Chang'e Qianli leaned over, grabbed Xing'e Qianli's hair, and forced the girl to raise her head. His face was ferocious and happy, and his voice was already crazy. Next, it's your turn. If you don't cooperate with me, I will turn you into the same experimental material. Of course. I won't let you die so easily. I haven't tasted such a beautiful girl like you yet. Xing'e Qianli gritted her teeth and refused to say a word. The pain in her body made her unusually sleepy, but the hatred and pain in her heart made her open her eyes wide and stare at the man in front of her, refusing to lower her eyelids. I'll give you 10 minutes to think about it. I hope you can give me a satisfactory answer. Chang'e Qianli looked at Xing'e Qianli's stubborn eyes, snorted angrily, and then threw her hard against the wall. Boom. Once again, Xing'e Qianli was hit and trembled with pain. She spat out blood again. Her eyes were completely blurred. The purple-eyed girl lowered her head and murmured suddenly, "Sister, I'm sorry, as expected. I can't escape fate." As if a switch was turned on, Xing'e Qianli chose the possibility of revenge and despair and pain. Then, the long and distant voice sounded in her ears again. "My child, I feel your pain. Now, I'm by your side. There is no need to despair or suffer. Come to see me. I will give you eternal power, the power to destroy everything." "No, I can't." Xing'e Qianli almost indulged in that gentle voice, but the vigilance and fear in her heart made her choose not to accept it. Her sister had warned her countless times. No matter what, she must not approach the darkness. Her sister worked very hard for her, and she would never admit defeat even for her. "I am not dead yet, I'm still alive. My sister once told me that I will live forever and always stay by her side." Then, the purple lightning flashed again like a spark in the ashes. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 540 Snow Cloud. In his mind, the grey-black world seemed to become a light background. The dark power in his body was still active, constantly eroding him. In pain, Jialuo suddenly opened his eyes. The mental stimulation made him sober instantly. The dome he looked at was full of silver white metal, not the white wall of his home. This is. The complicated information in his brain began to rewind, and Gluo finally remembered everything. He slowly supported his body, and found that he was lying on a restrained platform, but the thick metal shackles had been opened, and did not restrict his mobility. "You are awake." Huh. A soft voice sounded beside him. Gluo turned his head hurriedly, and found that there was a little girl next to the platform where he was. She was about 1.3 meters tall, and was too short. She was completely blocked by the platform. In addition, the girl's presence was so thin that Gluo stared at her for a long time before he confirmed that she was a real person. "You are really sleepy." The girl, who looked only 7 or 8 years old, had long snow white hair and her pupils were also clear white. She looked like a blind child. The girl's tender face was dotted with small features, cute but mysterious. Her slightly drooping eyelids made her look very sleepy. The little girl rubbed her eyes and yawned a little. "It makes me want to sleep too." "Gluo, who are you? How do you know me?" Gluo looked at the girl's cute and sleepy appearance, and his first feeling was alert. In this abnormal research institute, who can be sure that this little girl will not turn into a huge monster in the blink of an eye? "Zuxia. My name is Zuxia." The little girl, who seemed to be very sleepy, smacked her lips twice, and her slightly raised eyes seemed to be very dissatisfied with Gluo's attitude. "As for you, your name is written on the laboratory table. You are really stupid." Being called a stupid by a 7 or 8-year-old child, but unable to refute, Gluo scratched his hair and jumped off the table. At this time, Gluo only felt weak and tired, as if he had fought a big battle. In other words, a great battle was still going on in his body. The blood of the gods injected into Gluo's body by Changqiu and Qianli was fighting fiercely with the blood of Xingyan in Gluo's heart. The two completely regarded Gluo's body as a battlefield, and it was a life and death fight. In this situation, Gluo couldn't even control his body properly, let alone the source of power. The blood of the star dragon in your body is fighting against the blood of the desolate god. It's not a big deal. Don't be so stupid. The little girl with blue hair yawned again. Gluo moved his eyebrows, turned around quickly, and stared at the little girl named Zuxia in front of him seriously. "How do you know this? How rude." Zuxia's half-closed eyes met Gluo's, and her snow-white pupils seemed like the vast clouds, so beautiful that people wanted to immerse themselves in it. "You are so rude to me, and keep asking me questions. I came here just because you are curious. I don't plan to do anything, and I don't want to do anything." Zuxia's pure white eyes never blinked from beginning to end. The little girl's voice was a little unclear, but it sounded very comfortable. "I thought it was something interesting, so I came here specially. I didn't expect the answer to be so boring. Well, I'm leaving. See you again, if there is a chance." The little girl's soft and sticky voice sounded very unmotivated, and the words she said were very inexplicable. She seemed to have said what she wanted to say, and turned around to leave. "Hey you." Gluo was still confused. He wanted to run over to stop this little girl named Zuxia, but his heart suddenly beat violently, and the huge blood pressure made his eyes black, and his body almost fell. What else do you want to say, you idiot?" As if she had sensed something wrong with Gluo's body, the sleepy little girl slowly turned around, and after a moment of stagnation, she pointed her finger at the exit of Area A. "There are people fighting there. You know the one who broke into the base, right? Xingyan? Probably this name. I suggest you do it as soon as possible. Otherwise, the annoying thing will come out again." Zuxia muttered in a baby voice, then walked directly to the door, and slowly left the room through the opening and closing gate. Xingyan. Gluo hammered his heart hard, trying to relieve the pressure. He took a deep breath for a few seconds, and finally, after the blue-haired girl completely left the room, his body gradually returned to normal. "Xingyan is already dead. I can't let her friend die here too." Gluo gritted his teeth, and didn't care about the weird little girl just now. He forced himself to feel uncomfortable, staggered to the wall, and left the room with the metal wall. After Gluo left the room, he followed the widest passage, and staggered forward in the direction of the little girl's finger. At this time, at the end of the passage, Chang'e and Qianli was still chattering. Xingzaqi's in iron. I know that Ning's in iron's death makes you feel very uncomfortable, but the past should be left in the past. This world is already corrupt. If you want to survive, you need my strength. With your help, I, Kendi, can perfectly research the power of the blood of God. By that time, there will be no power in this world that can be above us. Not only can I fulfill any of your wishes, but I can also make your Huatang group famous all over the world and make you invincible in the world. Chang'e and Qianli kept hovering in front of Xingzaqi's in iron, looking a little impatient. He kept persuading the girl in his mouth, and it was really a bit earnest. I'm also a weak person. In order to become stronger, I have to do some things against my will. I don't want to. I'm a good person. Chang'e and Qianli, do you believe what you said? You damn it. Xingzaqi's in iron, who was leaning against the wall, was pale. The severe pain in her internal organs and body, and the desperate scene in front of her made her physically and mentally exhausted. However, her Shizuki did not succumb to the darkness in her heart. She gathered her strength, and waited for the opportunity. Her Shizuki, yes, I admit that I deserve to die. But what about those who deserve to die more than me? Seeing that his persuasion was ineffective, Nagachun Thousand Mile Eye rushed over and grabbed the girl's hair again. The bloodshot eyes of the slender man were full of mania. Her Shizuki, you understand. There are so many people who are more excessive than me, who deserve to die more than me. If you want justice, you can go to them, and I will help you. But, why are you indifferent to my perfect proposal now? Chapter 541 The Ferocious One. You and them are all the same. I will definitely regret cooperating with you. Just after Xingzaqi's in iron finished saying this, she was once again thrown against the wall by Chang'e and Qianli. The ruptured internal organs bleed more blood in the vibration. The girl covered her mouth, and the blood spilled from her fingers dripped onto her chest. Her eyes no longer stared at Chang'e and Qianli viciously, and her trembling lips were still stubbornly pursed. Foolish. Xingzaqi's in iron. Since you are looking for death, then I will make you live a life worse than death. Chang'e and Qianli's face was ferocious. He slowly stretched out his hand towards Xingzaqi's in iron. The purple-eyed girl turned her head away in disgust and closed her eyes. She seemed unable to resist. In fact, purple lightning was flashing between her, Xingzaqi's in iron. However, before Chang'e and Qianli's palm touched the girl, a figure in the other side of the passage ran over quickly, and his echoing roar seemed to be roaring with his whole life. Ning's in iron is dead. You have to live on. If you don't remember her as a dead person, then she, who doesn't even have a tombstone, will completely disappear. Luo dragged his weak body and ran forward in the passage. Luo didn't know why he shouted loudly. It seemed that some kind of will urged him to do so. Do your best to save Xingzaqi's in iron's heart and pull her out of the quagmire. With his eyesight far beyond that of ordinary people, Luo could see the situation of Chang'e and Qianli and Xingzaqi's in iron at the end of the passage. There seemed to be a voice roaring in his heart. Ning's in iron is dead. You can't even protect her friends. So, Luo shouted loudly while running wildly, because he was too anxious. His words were even a little scattered. Xingzaqi's in iron. Ning's in iron is dead. Her outer, inner, and real self, only you know. Only you can remember. So, you have to bear the hatred of her death. Avenge her. Asshole. Nagafune Chisato looked at her Shizuki who was leaning on the spot, and suddenly rolled up from the ground, putting some distance between them. I didn't expect that I would be interrupted by a bastard. The expression on Chisato Nagafune's face was only deeply cold. He turned around and slowly lowered his hands. Chisato Nagafune, who was just one step away from succeeding his plan, looked at Luo who was already close in front of him, and suddenly stepped forward. At this time, Luo was running forward with all his strength in the passage. His speed exceeded the limit of ordinary humans and he quickly approached the location of Hashizuki, but just as he officially stepped into the battlefield, his figure suddenly stagnated. His strong eyesight allowed Luo to see the scene at that moment. Chisato Nagafune, with his hands hanging down, rushed in front of him like a ghost. The moment the two were too close, Luo could clearly see the anger and tyranny in Chisato Nagafune's black and red eyes. Jialuo saw Chisato Nagafune and wanted to react, but unfortunately, his condition at the moment was too bad, and he couldn't make an effective response at all. The next moment, Jialuo felt a surging pain in his abdomen, and then his body flew backwards uncontrollably. Ah. Cough, cough, cough. The violent collision made Jialuo feel breathless, and the pain in his abdomen made him curl up. Changquan Qianli's attack was very powerful, and Jialuo, whose face was almost touching the ground, even wondered if his internal organs were broken. Jialuo, run. Hoshizaki Erita supported her body by standing against the wall, but her reminder was a step too late after all. Changquan Qianli, with a gloomy and terrifying face, was still moving forward. He walked to Jialuo step by step, raised his hand to pinch Jialuo's neck, gritting his teeth, as if he wanted to chew Jialuo into pieces and swallow him into his stomach. A mere special test subject actually dared to disturb my plan. He is really courting death. Jialuo was lifted up in the air. The pressure on his neck was getting bigger and bigger. He waved his fists to let Changquan Qianli let him go, but his current condition was too bad. The hammering with all his strength was completely blocked by the light red smoke on Changquan Qianli's body. The situation took a sharp turn for the worse. Normally, Changquan Qianli was like an elephant being hammered by a child, and killing Jialuo was just a piece of cake. But what annoyed Changquan Qianli was that the new Xingzaki Zilan had rekindled hope at this time. If she wanted to surrender, she had to make her feel even more desperate. He let you feel your own powerlessness. Changquan Qianli suddenly relaxed her stranglehold on Jialuo. He raised his hand and threw Jialuo towards Xingzaki Zilan like throwing garbage. The purple-eyed girl pushed away the wall, opened her arms, and hugged Jialuo, who was thrown over violently. The collision of their bodies made her body hurt again, and new blood flowed from her lips and teeth. Xingzaki Zilan, I'm sorry, I can't help much. Jialuo came down from the support of the purple-eyed girl. The pain forced him to bend his waist. He covered his abdomen with his left hand, and stretched out his right hand from the shoulder of Hoshizaki Erita to support her, who was already shaky. Idiot, you should have run away. Hoshizaki Erita's condition was worse than Jialuo's, but the girl still raised a faint smile on her cheeks, and said in a low voice, just now, thank you. Oh. Two desperate mandarin ducks, let's play a game. Changquan Qianli interrupted the warmth of Jialuo and the other person with a grim smile. He twisted his neck with a creaking sound, and tore the tie on his chest casually. I'll give you 10 minutes, you can run away as much as you want, and I will start looking for you after 10 minutes. If you dodge my pursuit and escape successfully, then I will not attack you again, but if I catch up with you, but I will torture you very well, so both of you stop kissing each other now, and run quickly. The farther the better. Nagashun Chisato smiled and blinked. The brutality and desire in his heart made his smile completely distorted. Let's go. Hoshizaki Erita glanced at Nagashun Chisato, who was standing there with his hands spread out, indicating that he would not launch an attack. Without even a reply, he quickly tapped Jialuo's back, turned around and started to run away with him. I will make you feel deeper despair. Nagashun Chisato, who stood there, watched the two people supporting each other and slowly leaving. He licked his nails twice with his long tongue, and then turned and walked towards his office. Hoshizaki Erita, you must cooperate with me, you will never escape. Changquan Qianli thought that he now had the power to crush everyone. Since he had completely controlled the situation, he should be even more powerful. This is even more despairing. Chapter 542, Weakness. Hurry up, let's run quickly. Jialuo gritted his teeth and endured the pain in his body. His face flushed. At this time, the blood of God injected into Jialuo's body by Changquan Qianli had completely activated Xing'an's blood. The fight between the two sides reached a fever pitch, and it was a desperate situation. Under the influence of this battle, Jialuo's body would be cramped with pain every step he took. Xingzaki Zilan's situation was even more serious. As the girl moved forward, blood kept flowing from the corners of her mouth. She gritted her teeth and moved forward step by step, as if she would never be able to move forward again if she relaxed a little. Jialuo also wanted to carry her away, but his body was also stretched to the limit. Everything between the two was just as Changquan Qianli expected. This despair in hope was more uncomfortable than irresistible death. The pain in their bodies prevented them from moving forward quickly, and the wounds that worsened during the process made their speed even slower. They injured the pain and the increasingly slow speed. Guo actually had no fear in his heart. He was just very anxious. As long as he delayed enough time, everything would be fine. Although Chang'e and Qianli didn't know where he got the god's blood, and it was very overbearing, the blood of the star dragon was not a vegetarian. Guo was sure that crossing Yan's blood would win in the end. And by killing the god's blood and absorbing the god's blood, the blood of the star dragon would become stronger. Guo even had the opportunity to condense the source crystal and advance to the 4th silver rank. Guo, this won't work. The purple-eyed girl bit her lips and suddenly pushed Guo away. She staggered back a few steps and stopped by holding the wall next to her. Guo, Chang'e and Qianli's target is only me. We must go separately. Now I have shut down all the surveillance in the entire base. It is not so easy for him to find me in such a large crisscross corridor. If we consciously escape separately, it will be difficult for him to find you after he finds me. If we are forced into a desperate situation, I can kill him. Xingzaki Zilan came here not to die. She did have a way to exert power that ordinary people could not imagine, but the price was heavy. What a joke. No. Xingzaki Zilan, please believe me, just delay time. Guo shook his head decisively to refuse and stood up to support Xingzaki Zilan again, but was pushed away and refused by the purple-eyed girl. Guo, the speed of escape is too slow now. There is no time to argue. We must go separately. If we are both caught, then there will be no chance. The purple-eyed girl looked up at Guo's unbelievable look, and the girl suddenly laughed softly. Her smile was like a fluttering butterfly. No one will save the two of us. Now we can only save each other. If we are both caught, then everything will be over. No matter who escapes, we must save the other person. Xingzaki Zilan, as long as we delay time, I can kill him. Guo slowly lowered his head, clenched his fists tightly, but he had no way to refute. Now, we are just delaying time. The purple-eyed girl's eyes flickered with only determination, and her determination was so pure that there seemed to be no flaw in her hesitation. Guo, I'm sorry to involve you. Forgive my selfishness and still keep my trump card. You said you need time, so we must buy you time. Okay. Guo nodded heavily, acknowledging the girl's determination and respecting her strength. Well, let's get started. Xingzaki Zilan turned around and walked into the passage with a bright smile. She came here alone because she was sure of her victory. It was with this determination that she persuaded Xingzaki Zen, but at this time, facing Guo's assurance, she actually became cowardly. If possible, she didn't want to walk into the darkness. Really strong. Guo looked at the back of Xingzaki Zilan leaving and suddenly laughed. Then, the girl turned around and ran in the opposite direction of Xingzaki Zilan without hesitation. Because this is an agreement. An agreement that cannot be forgotten even if you die. As she moved, the long metal passage seemed to be left with only a dark hole, and the lights on the top of the corridor flickered. In this quiet terror, Guo ran forward frantically. He didn't know the way, and he didn't find anything like a slogan, so he could only turn around while fleeing, identify a direction, and keep fleeing at the cumbersome intersection. The farther the better. The more hidden the better. As Guo ran, he gradually saw the broken corpses of humans and various dead monsters. They were scattered everywhere without any sound, and the blood and fishy smell were unobstructed in the passage. But it was a matter of life and death, and Guo didn't care about the feeling of nausea and vomiting, and kept going inside. More than 20 minutes had passed since he escaped from Chang'e and Qianli, and Guo had no idea about the situation of Xingzaki Zilan. The only thing he could do was to escape to a place where Chang'e and Qianli couldn't find him and prayer. Guo could see that Chang'e and Qianli attached great importance to Xingzaki Zilan. His target was her, so she would never die. What Chang'e and Qianli wanted was Xingzaki Zilan to surrender. He wanted to use Guo to shake her and hit him. Damn, wait for a while. When I'm not sick, I'll hammer you to death. Guo covered his stomach and felt that his body was turning upside down. As time passed, the pain brought by the blood confrontation not only did not ease, but became more intense. It felt as if the blood of God had reached a point of life and death, and had to burst out with all its strength to fight against the Star Dragon bloodline. This desperate struggle made the battle extremely miserable. Roar, a horse, and Loroar suddenly came from the front of the passage. GLUO stopped abruptly. There was a 90-degree corner in front of him. He didn't know what monsters were in front of him. The best choice should be to turn back and take another road, but he had been running for a minute or two on the last fork in the road. The pain on GLUO's body caused by Chang'e and Qianli had disappeared. Although he was weak now, he could still maintain a 100-meter sprint time within 10 seconds for a short time. Although he didn't run so fast all the way, he still had to run the same distance of 1 or 2 minutes. At this time, when every second counted, fight. GLUO gritted his teeth, calmed his heavy breathing a little, and took another step. In order to try not to make any sound, his speed was much slower at this time. However, the corner was not too far away, and GLUO walked carefully to the wall of the corner and glanced ahead. To GLUO's surprise, there was a sign in the corridor ahead, Chapter 543 Mutant. Main control room fell off the wall for some reason. The huge gate seemed to have been bombarded by a missile, and a big hole exploded inside. There was a pile of corpses in front of the main control room. The only surviving humanoid monster was lying on the ground, and its claw-shaped arms kept tearing off the flesh and blood of the corpse in front of it and stuffing it into its mouth. Roar. The monster, which had eaten up the corpse in front of it, stood up a little slowly and took a step towards a human corpse at the main door of the main control room. The corpse in black clothes was considered tall, but its body was full of cracked wounds. The cervical vertebrae in the neck had been crushed, and the head with closed eyes fell to the ground without any support. GLUO swallowed his saliva nervously. He didn't dare to hesitate. While the monster had no intention of turning back, GLUO stuck to the wall on the right and began to move forward in the monster's blind spot. There was a large T-shaped intersection in front of the main control room. As long as he walked behind the monster perfectly, GLUO could quickly escape from this area. Roar. The monster slowly walked to the black-clothed corpse, slowly lay on the ground, and began to lick the blood that flowed out of the corpse. It licked very seriously, and it seemed that it had no feeling around it. GLUO held his breath and moved sideways in fear. As he got closer, he finally saw the hideous appearance of the monster clearly. The humanoid monster was a bit like the mutant monster in the Resident Evil. The naked body was completely piled up with red and black muscle blocks. The muscles of humans that were originally very symmetrical were bulging, as if they had turned into fibers. The surface skin also disappeared, and the hands and feet were particularly huge. The nails that were more than 30 centimeters long also turned into thick stratum corneum, which looked like the claws of a wild beast. It lay on the ground, licking the blood bit by bit, while GLUO moved sideways on tiptoe, gradually approaching the T-junction within 10 meters without any danger. Roar. The humanoid mutant with its long tongue suddenly stopped licking and froze there. GLUO was also stunned when it paused, but the bad premonition in his heart made him suddenly give up tiptoeing. GLUO turned around and ran towards the turn of the T-shaped intersection. It only took GLUO about a second to cross the 10-meter distance. At that time, he could escape from this place by turning directly. Roar. At this time, the humanoid mutant had completely confirmed the existence of the intruder. It turned around suddenly, and its huge claws actually grabbed a human corpse next to it and threw it in front of GLUO. Boom. The throwing force that humans could not achieve slammed the corpse against the wall, making it look like a mosquito that was slapped to death. The reflex judgment of the humanoid mutant was too terrible. If GLUO had not stopped, he would have been hit by the corpse. But at the same time, GLUO, who stopped sprinting, completely lost the possibility of escaping immediately. At this moment, the humanoid mutant that blocked the entrance of the passage stood up with his hands on the ground. GLUO took a step forward at the same time and pulled out the long sword that was stuck in the ground not far from the side. Zin. The trembling sound of the narrow tang sword was like the sound of flowing water and wind. The front end of the sword had been broken, and the blood stains on it dried into patterns, as if to prove the persistence of the previous owner as a realm warrior. Roar. The muscles of the humanoid mutant bulged high and rushed towards GLUO like a mad buffalo. Sure enough, GLUO held the broken sword with both hands, looking at the monster running wildly, and confirmed his guess. The monster's muscles and body shape were exaggerated and terrifying, but its speed also became a flaw. A big guy without agility is not impossible to kill. Since he was injected with the blood of God, GLUO held his breath in his heart. The disorder in his blood made him unable to summon Heaven's Blade killing. He was weakened by the defeat and had no way to resist, but the anger in his heart, together with the tyrannical emotions, occupied his heart. He wanted to vent. He wanted to use his own power to seize life. He wanted to use his own life to ask this world, is there anything that can determine fate? Boom. 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 The humanoid mutant's forward steps rumbled like a bulldozer, and it waved its claws and slammed down towards GLUO's location. Ding. GLUO stepped sideways on the wall and rolled away with the explosion of the recoil. The monster was very powerful, but its speed was also very slow, and its body was very stiff. GLUO rolled over from the ground and climbed up. While the humanoid mutant had not yet recovered, he slashed it hard on the back. The muscle block that looked abnormally hard was like tofu under the slashing of the broken knife. The muscle with visible fibers was cut open half an inch, and black and red blood gushed out. GLUO was worried that its blood was poisonous, so he rolled away quickly, and the monster only then realized that it was injured and had not hit the target just now. Roar. The humanoid mutant roared again. It had no intention of treating the wound. The anger and desire to fight made it repeat the action just now, stomping towards the weak food. Then, GLUO pursed his lips and held the handle of the knife tightly with both hands. He did not behave like a bullfight before. GLUO took big steps and rushed towards the monster faster and faster. Under the torture of weakness and pain, GLUO chose to charge. Roar. The monster waved its claws frantically. The combination of the speeds of the two made the collision come quickly and violently. Facing the huge claws of the humanoid mutant, GLUO, who was charging, actually bent down and rushed past the monster like a tackle. In the sword light, when GLUO approached the monster's lower limbs, he used all his strength to chop the broken blade held in both hands towards its knees. Cap. After the low sound, GLUO had completely staggered with the humanoid mutant. GLUO rolled backwards for several times without hesitation and got far away from the monster. At this time, the humanoid mutant paused for a moment after realizing that it had failed again. Then it began to turn its body, but on the way to turning, it fell to the ground with a clang. Its left leg had been broken into sections at the knee, and black and red blood spurted out from the wounds on both sides. The only remaining leg could no longer support the heavy body. Roar. GLUO, who returned to the original position, looked at the monster blocking the way to the main control room. He was no longer terrified. This kind of monster without IQ, with a lame leg, was just meat on the chopping board. Chapter 544 Giant Dog. Next, just deal with it, and then continue to run away. GLUO handed the broken blade to his right hand. He looked up at the roaring humanoid mutant in front of him, with a relaxed smile on his face, but just before his smile fully blossomed, his expression suddenly froze. At this moment, the humanoid mutant lay on the ground and roared in a very low voice. It seemed to sense something and began to crawl towards GLUO very nervously, but its speed was not really fast. The mutant did not pull away enough distance at all. The approaching animal shadow had already jumped out from the T-shaped intersection. It was a mutant Rottweiler, with only a small amount of brown on its pure black body. It was nearly 10 meters long and nearly 3.5 meters tall at the shoulder, making its body look particularly terrifying. But while walking, the Rottweiler was still light and fast, and its short tail was slightly longer. Its eyes flashed with a calm red, and the mouth on the huge head slowly opened, grinning with white sharp teeth. The Rottweiler is one of the most ferocious giant dogs in the world. With this mutation, it is already a monster. The humanoid mutant was still crawling forward, and the shadowy Rottweiler was slowly approaching it. GLUO, who was farther away, held the broken blade in one hand and hid it behind him, and began to slowly retreat. GLUO heard that, even if you are afraid of a dog, you can't run away. If you run away, you will definitely be chased. so he can only try to reduce his presence and slowly retreat backwards. On the other side, just as the humanoid mutant was about to enter the corridor, the mutated fierce dog finally launched an attack. Millions of years of animal evolution have pushed the killing ability of predators to the highest peak. Cats and dogs have perfectly adapted to nature. Their hunting and killing abilities are the pride of their body structure evolution. The mutated Rottweiler ran forward when the light flickered the brightest and darkest. The pads of meat under its feet slapped light sound vibrations, and its vibrating body seemed to have turned into the tail feathers on a sharp arrow. The calm blood eyes showed no violent emotions. The pitch black giant dog caught up with the humanoid mutant in a second and jumped down with its bent body. The monster, lying on the ground with a broken leg, was pressed down by the Rottweiler without any ability to resist. Its neigh was short and panicked, but the sudden weight made its body press down, and its muscular neck reflexively raised, and the fierce dog's huge mouth bit open the muscles of the humanoid mutant in a flash. The conical canine teeth tore open the muscles and blood vessels, and then the pressure extended to the cervical vertebrae. The Rottweiler's body began to swing, and its head twisted suddenly crack. The shrill neigh of the humanoid mutant was interrupted with the last crisp sound, and its head with a completely disfigured face was twisted off, and black and red blood sprayed everywhere. The Rottweiler threw up the monster's still twitching head, and with its huge mouth raised, it directly bit off the fallen skull, and its white teeth instantly crushed half of it. After a short chew, it ate the rest of the humanoid mutant's head. Gluo barely held his breath, and the huge feeling of weakness made him shaky. He saw the mutated Rottweiler kill the humanoid mutant in 3 seconds. Now, this dark predator was breaking open its chest and gnawing at its heart. The fierce dog's mouth was full of blood, and Gluo took the opportunity to retreat. The humanoid mutant's body was very large, and it would take some time for the Rottweiler to eat it all, and after eating it all, it probably had no desire to eat. Gluo looked back carefully at the 90-degree corner of the passage. At this speed, he could leave the mutated Rottweiler's sight in just 1 minute, and then escape from here at full speed. But, the mutated Rottweiler, after eating the humanoid mutant's head and heart, it actually stopped eating. It raised its head, licked the bloodstains from the corner of its mouth with its black giant tongue, leaned over and jumped off the swollen humanoid corpse, and its skull eyes began to stare at Gluo in front of it. Fuck, so picky about food. Gluo instantly straightened his body, stopped his backward steps, and breathed hard in shock. The mutant Rottweiler seemed to be looking at him, and its huge nose trembled and sniffed twice, then raised its steps, and began to move towards Gluo. It did not show the desire to kill, but instead stared at Gluo in front of it like a guard. Could it be? A very bad guess spread in Gluo's mind. The more he thought about it, the more it made sense, and finally he was decisive in his heart. This mutant Rottweiler was raised by Chang'e and Qianli. Why didn't he kill them when he was sure to win? Why was he so confident in this chase? Why did he turn around and go back to Area A of the base? Chang'e and Qianli. Gluo slowly gritted his teeth, a feeling of rage spreading in his heart. Since the Rottweiler has caught up with him, it is obvious that the more important Ishizaki Erita has been caught. Since there is no time left, then, Gluo pulled out his right hand from behind and held the broken tang sword tightly in his hand. A man can't run faster than a dog. Now he either dies here or kills this vicious dog and continues to escape. With the mutant Rottweiler seemed to sense Gluo's desire to attack. It stopped moving forward and looked at the broken sword in Gluo's hand vigilantly. A man and a dog stood opposite each other. The mutant dog never had the idea of attacking, but Gluo, who was in a weak position, became more anxious. Once Chang'e and Qianli arrived here, everything would be over. Gluo knew that he had no time to hesitate. He held the tang sword horizontally with both hands and stepped forward fiercely. Kill, victory or death. At this moment with no way out, Gluo suddenly suppressed the panic of life and death. He held the broken weapon in his hand and began to charge forward. Woof. The mutant Rottweiler seemed to be stimulated by Gluo's roar of murderous intent. It suddenly raised its body, stepped on the metal ground with 4 claws, and rushed over. The fierce dog rushed towards him, with fangs bared on its black head, as if ready to tear off the skin and flesh of its prey at any time. The momentum of the mutant Rottweiler's violent charge made GLUO's originally stable mind suddenly soften, and his running steps slowed down for a moment. But at the moment, when GLUO paused, the mutant Rottweiler suddenly jumped up from the ground, pounced on GLUO's hands holding the sword, and GLUO, who found himself in a critical situation, reflexively threw away the Tang sword and retracted his hands. The next second, after throwing the knife, GLUO regretted it, but the matter was already done. Having lost his weapon, GLUO rolled on the ground and began to distance himself from the mutant Rottweiler. Chapter 545 Forced. GLUO threw the knife and retracted his hand, allowing him to successfully avoid the first bite of the mutant Rottweiler, so that it only bit the Tang sword. Woof. The mutant Rottweiler that fell to the ground spat out the broken knife in its mouth, and without any pause, it once again pounced on GLUO, who got up from rolling. GLUO could only shrink his body in a hurry and try to avoid it, but the mutant Rottweiler was too big, and GLUO was hit on the head by the belly of the vicious dog with a bang. The huge recoil force made GLUO's back of the head hit the ground, and his head hurt instantly, and his eyes suddenly went black. Fortunately, GLUO, whose senses were damaged, still remembered his crisis. He hugged the huge Rottweiler with both hands, put his head on the middle of its abdomen, and held it tightly with both arms, and refused to let go. Woof, woof, woof. The mutant Rottweiler kept roaring and struggling to break free, but at this time its head could not bite GLUO in his arms, and its foreclaws could not effectively attack. The Rottweiler that had been struggling for a long time finally lay on the ground, and its heavy body directly pressed on GLUO's upper body. GLUO, who had brought trouble upon himself, quickly withdrew his hands and began to support the dog's belly that was pressing on his head. This giant dog was too heavy. If GLUO did not try his best to support it, he would probably be suffocated to death by the thick fur and muscles. The mutant Rottweiler seemed to have found a way to stop GLUO from moving. The giant dog simply lay there motionless, forcing GLUO to support the pressure above his head with both hands. And the attack that GLUO tried to launch was like a tickle to the mutant dog. It did not react at all. After trying several methods, even tickling, GLUO still could not escape. There was no way. GLUO was grateful that he was as weak as an ordinary person now. The only reason he was not crushed to death was that the vicious dog was generous enough. Facing the mutant Rottweiler that had no desire to attack him, GLUO could only hold on, and the moment he feared did not wait too long. Soon, a light footsteps and the sound of soft singing came from the side of the T-shaped intersection. I can't dream of the bright moonlight, just like losing my eyes and falling into a deserted city. Changchuan Kaianli was holding a figure who had already quietly fainted in his hand, and his leisurely steps were very brisk. He sang a song that was a little out of tune and walked over without any hurry. Chocolate well done. The second little bastard was also caught singing the words he wanted to say with a made-up tune. Changchuan Kaianli walked to the mutant Rottweiler and casually threw the girl who was being pulled by the collar in his right hand to the ground. Pa. The purple-eyed girl was more embarrassed than before, with bloodstains on her nostrils and mouth corners, and blood flowing from her right ear. When the unconscious girl was thrown to the ground, she frowned in pain and coughed violently a few times. Zingzakishinan. GLUO took down his left hand and tried to touch the girl who was an arm's length away from him, but Chisato Nagakane, who was standing not far away, suddenly snapped his fingers, and the mutated Rottweiler stood up, turned his body, and opened his mouth to bite GLUO directly. Fuck. GLUO quickly retracted his hands, grabbed the neck of the fierce dog, and propped up its mouth. At this time, the saliva left by the giant dog had even dripped onto GLUO's clothes. The head of the mutated Rottweiler relied on its weight and strength to continuously exert pressure on GLUO, but it did not use all its strength. Instead, it felt like it was just forcing GLUO, and could not free his hands. GLUO. Zingzakishinan, who was awakened by GLUO shouting, slowly opened her eyes. The girl's pupils seemed to have lost focus and were confused. After nearly a minute, she finally saw the scene in front of her clearly. Be careful. The purple-eyed girl trembled and tried to support her body, but she was less than halfway up when Chito's Nagafune came over and kicked her in the chest. Shizuki Erita fell to the ground with a thud, blood suddenly oozing from the corners of her mouth and nose, and her body collapsed again. It seemed that she would never get up again. Chito's Nagafune. You are a beast. If you have the guts. GLUO tried to divert Chito's Nagafune's attention with insults, but the Rottweiler on his body suddenly exerted force, and the sense of crisis of being bitten to death made GLUO support himself with all his strength, and he had no room to speak. Although I'm a little sorry, I advise you as a friendly advice, don't try to provoke me, otherwise. Chito's Nagafune looked at the two people on the verge of life and death, and laughed happily again. He walked slowly to the side of Shizuki Erita, and slowly squatted down. Zingzaki Zinion, I think you have seen the power of God's blood. Don't you feel moved? Zingzaki Zinion, who had slightly recovered her perception, listened to Changcho and Chisato's story without any reaction. She just tilted her head, and looked at GLUO who was struggling to support herself, with guilt and confusion on her face. Zingzaki Zinion, there are too many strong people in this world, and we are still too weak. Changcho and Chisato slowly sighed, and once again showed an obsessed smile on her face. Fortunately, my God has not abandoned me. It is willing to give me God's blood and let me spread God's glory. So, Zingzaki Zinion, now, choose. Changcho and Chisato stood up from the ground, with indifference and madness mixed in his eyes. Is it here, to be killed by me, or to cooperate with me, and share the secret of God's blood with me? Zingzaki Zinion did not answer and reject Changcho and Chisato, but just gritted her teeth and said nothing. There was no need to hesitate in her answer, but just to prevent Changcho and Chisato from hurting GLUO, she chose to respond with silence. Stupid. Chisato Nagafune showed a hideous smile on her face, shook her head, and looked at Shizuki Erita, as if she was looking at another fool who refused to repent. Now, as the price for your hesitation about the answer, I will let my lovely dog eat your boyfriend's left arm in 1 minute, the right arm in another minute, and then every minute it will be the turn of left leg, right leg, lower limbs, torso, head. Chisato Nagafune smiled at GLUO who was holding on with gritted teeth, and began to tap the metal wall with her fingers. I'm sorry. The price of your constant hesitation is the scene of this weakling being torn to pieces and eaten. Dap. Chisato Nagafune tapped the wall once every second, and each sound seemed to tap in Shizuki Erita's heart. The approaching torture and death were like a greedy beast, its turbid eyes staring at GLUO on the ground, ready to pounce on him and tear his body apart when the 60th tap sounded. What Shizuki Erita saw was that the people he had dragged into crisis were dying slowly in the most painful scene. Chapter 546 Crossing Yan's Message. Crossing, Zaki, Zin, Yan. GLUO's weakness continued to grow, and his arms, which were too strong, began to tremble. The head of the mutant Rottweiler was still pressing down, and even these 4 short words were squeezed out of his throat by gritted teeth. GLUO slowly turned his head, and his eyes met the swaying purple eyes of the girl who was looking at him quietly. What kind of eyes were those? Sadness, powerlessness, memories, expectations, self-blame, pain. The pupils with too many emotions swayed in a trance in tears, and the purple pupils seemed to have turned into the most beautiful gems in the world, and the color of the halo swayed with deep struggle. GLUO. I want to give up. The purple-eyed girl slowly opened her lips. She opened them with difficulty, and the movement of her lips was also vague and weak, but GLUO seemed to hear her most earnest cry at this moment. Please let me choose, give up. The words of surrender finally turned into a subtle sound from Zingzaki Zinion's mouth, and tears flowed from the corners of her eyes, as crystal clear as the riverbank sprinkled with moonlight. Zingzaki Erita, you're giving up. Damn it, it's almost healed. GLUO's eyes were filled with burning will. There was no more cowardice or fear in his heart. Anger and hatred burned his thoughts like a flame that pierced the sky. From being caught by an ordinary female college student, injected with a mixture of God's blood, enduring the pain and danger of mutation, released by a devilish pervert like a dog, and chased him with a big dog. What kind of coercion? Dap. Changcho and Kyan Li's knuckles never stopped knocking on the wall. He looked at the painful scene of the two people, and laughed as if he had eaten the sweetest food. Zingzaki Erita. This world. GLUO felt that his heart was beating slower and slower, but each vibration was like a huge hammer hitting him. He once again remembered the eye contact with the purple-eyed girl just now, and the softest part of his heart blossomed. This world may be twisted and dark, or it may have sunk and fallen, and will be completely destroyed sooner or later, but not now. GLUO's roar echoed in the passage, and his blood vessels began to swell. Whether it was veins, arteries or capillaries, all the places where blood flowed all burst high, looking like a relief wrapped in thorns. Before the end of the world, no matter whose sin, they must pay. GLUO felt the blood in his body boiling, and he suddenly understood all the reasons and what he was missing. The reason why the blood of the Star Dragon and the blood of the gods were evenly matched and could not be determined was not that the Star Dragon was not strong enough, but that GLUO, the master, did not react. From beginning to end, GLUO did not control his blood, take the initiative to attack, and did not really face the threat of the blood of the gods. Those who face the darkness and want to move forward must be resolute and victorious. Go forward and face death with equanimity. I'm the dragon of the stars. GLUO didn't know what happened to him, but in the heat of his blood boiling, he felt that his body was constantly surging with strength. At this time, the mutated Rottweiler wanted to push its head down, but the pressure it generated was completely supported by GLUO's hideous and terrifying arms. GLUO. Impossible. Enough. Crossing Xinyan looked at GLUO's burning life to fight, and cried with self-blame. She wanted to get up to help him, but the injury in her internal organs made her unable to move. You can't defeat Changqiu and Qianli. Enough. The purple-eyed girl cried. She wanted to give in, wanted to stop the pain that GLUO suffered, but his words, his actions, his eyes, his shouting, his struggle, his determination seemed to become the starlight in the night. She wanted to give up, but her voice told her that, if she gave up, then the price paid by the boy in front of her would be meaningless. GLUO, that's enough. Stop it. What a touching scene. I believe in love again. Nagafune Shisato stood aside and leaned against the wall, looking at the two of them indifferently. A feeling of jealousy and anger filled his heart, making his shouting seem particularly sharp. But it's meaningless. Chocolate. Bite him to death with all your strength. Woof. The mutated Rottweiler suddenly straightened its body as it roared, and then began to bite forward with all its strength. GLUO. Xingza Kierata, shut up. As a lady, you should be obedient and watch boys show off. GLUO shouted to interrupt Xingza Kierata's words, while covering up the girl's weak voice. The blood vessels in GLUO's body seemed to burst. At this moment, the blood war in GLUO's body has come to an end. The completely burning blood of the Star Dragon is engulfing everything in the blood of God with a sweeping momentum. GLUO's strength was recovering, but time was still not enough. The huge power of the mutant Rottweiler made GLUO's support continue to press down, and the smelly breath of the giant dog kept spraying on GLUO's side face. But at this time, GLUO turned his head to look at Xinqian, but he was smiling, his gums were bleeding, and the determination in his eyes began to go crazy. Xinqian, I once watched the most important person in my life die. I thought I couldn't do anything, but later I realized that what I couldn't do didn't mean that others couldn't do it. So, the roar in GLUO's throat suddenly became low and slow, as if something was about to wake up from his body. So, now you don't have to fall into darkness. I will help you this time, just like next time, you will help me. GLUO's mind was burning with chaos. His will echoed in his body. His heart suddenly stopped beating, and then, boom. In GLUO's consciousness, after a very long pause, his heart suddenly shook violently as never before. GLUO's eyes went dark in an instant. His extremely high blood pressure paralyzed his mind. He seemed to know nothing, but vaguely he saw something in the dark sea of consciousness. It was an eye with an upright pupil, shining with brilliant star colors. The pupils began to close in the darkness, and a voice rumbling like thunder began to speak in a low and heavy voice. GLUO, you have finally come to this day. Congratulations. You will leave the human body and embark on the journey of the Star Dragon. From today on, you should stand up straight in front of all creatures except me. Because, under the shining sky of the Milky Way, the long cry of the dragon shadow has never stopped. Until today, the billions of creatures crawling in front of her still dare not stand up. One day, when she spreads her wings again, the vast sea of stars will stir up waves and knock down the gods. In the consciousness, in the endless darkness, Crossing Yan's voice began to rise, and her pride in overlooking everything was like the stars in the sky. Until death. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 547 Sleepwalking. GLUO. In the dimly lit corridor, Crossing Yan collapsed on the ground weakly. She suddenly found that GLUO seemed to be immobilized by a spell. His breathing was weak and his originally vigorous blood began to disappear. What's wrong with you? Speak. Crossing Yan struggled to get up again, but still collapsed to the ground. In the shadow, GLUO's pupils that were facing her eyes opened completely, as if they had lost focus, and a little light began to flicker in the depths of the black pupils. Poor bastard. Did he die suddenly from overexertion? Chocolate. Eat him. Changchuan Qianli, who was leaning against the wall in the distance, used his hands to support the wall to stand up. He had already reached the 4th silver stage, and suddenly had some inexplicable feeling. Changchuan Qianli stood up in the center of the passage, and his whole body suddenly began to tense up. Woof. The mutated Rottweiler heard the master's order, and decided to completely kill the weak human in front of him, and wanted to bend down to bite his head. It had always been supported by this human with both hands, so this time it decided to use a different method. The Rottweiler began to retreat, and slowly raised its head, but it was not very smart, and suddenly found that it could not raise its head. I don't know when. The weak human in front of it looked directly at it, and there seemed to be some light flashing in its eyes, and a terrible majesty made it tremble all over. Woof. Woof. The Rottweiler began to shake its head and struggle to leave, but GLUO, who was numb like a puppet, grabbed a large piece of flesh on its neck with his left hand. The tall mutant Rottweiler. Unexpectedly, it couldn't break free no matter what. GLUO? Zingzakizalan looked at the incredible things in front of him. GLUO relied on only his left hand to prevent the 3-meter-long vicious dog from breaking free. At the same time, GLUO's bulging blood vessels were returning to their original state, and his right hand slowly retracted and clenched into a fist. Puff. The next moment, GLUO's straight punch pushed forward and hit the Rottweiler straight, making a sound as if a person was hitting mud. The thick fur and strong muscles of the giant dog, as if it had turned into a piece of paper. GLUO punched through it directly. Half of his arm was punched into the Rottweiler's body, and its heart was smashed directly. GLUO's fist stayed in the Rottweiler's body for 2 or 3 seconds, and this giant mutant dog didn't even make a wail, and completely lost its voice. GLUO pulled his right arm out of the fierce dog's flesh and blood, and pushed its body away casually. Black and red blood flowed from GLUO's right fist to his elbow, and then dripped from his elbow to the ground. GLUO stood up silently, without roaring or venting, as if he was still asleep, but now he was just sleepwalking. How could it be? Changchuan Qianli looked at everything in front of him in disbelief. The mutant Rottweiler that he had worked hard to cultivate was even more powerful than a warrior of the 2nd Black Iron stage. How could it be killed in an instant? What on earth? Changchuan Qianli looked at GLUO, who was standing still with his head down, and his tongue licked his lips unnaturally. As a researcher, he had not seen anything that violated the rules he knew for many years. His inner desire to study and his greed to become stronger made Changchuan Qianli choose not to leave. He stood up and looked at the watch on his wrist. The base explosion still had 25 minutes left. Enough. Perfect connection. If not enough, you can stop the self-destruction. As the blood of the dead giant dog gushed out, the bloody smell that was originally overflowing in the passage became more pungent, and the lights on the top of the corridor flickered continuously. Changchuan Qianli stood in place and carefully observed the boy in front of him, who lowered his head and did not move, but did not find anything abnormal. GLUO did not show any signs of using the source power at all. The punch he just used to kill the mutant Rottweiler was pure physical strength. Because of this, his research value is even greater. Changchuan Qianli's tongue slowly swept across his lips, and he slowly leaned down, and the light red source power like smoke flowed through his body. Needle-like pain began to spread all over the body. Chang Chun kindly endured the pain without changing her expression, secretly predicting the situation of the attack later. Chang Chun Qianli's source power is the blood source power of blood attribute. The original talent is to stimulate the cells of the body, squeeze and overdraw the potential, so that the physical fitness can be greatly improved. But the body that is overstimulated will also leave 1,000 holes of hidden injuries. If Chang Chun Qianli did not have the powerful recovery power of the blood of God, he would have died miserably. Because he had enough trump cards, Chang Chun Qianli was not panicked at all. GLUO. Be careful, Chang Chun Qianli's speed is very fast. Zinki Zilan moved slowly and leaned against the wall. She saw the battle between the two people about to break out and hurriedly reminded GLUO to be careful. But at this time, GLUO was still standing there with his eyes closed. It is better to say that he really fell asleep than to say that he was taking a nap. Chang Chun Qianli looked at Zinki Zilan with contempt, obviously not caring about this meaningless reminder. He slowly bent down, and the mist of source power exploded instantly. The next moment, he began to run forward at a speed that exceeded all the impressions of Hashizaki Erita. The route that Chang Chun Qianli was moving forward was not a straight line, but a crooked one, moving left and right. He seemed to be testing GLUO's perception, and also intended to use this method to ensure his own safety. But GLUO, who stood there with his eyes closed, never made any movement. In a moment, Chang Chun Qianli had already approached GLUO's body. He kept stepping sideways on the wall and observing GLUO at a close distance at a very high speed. At this moment, GLUO, with his eyes lightly closed, stood there with his hands hanging down, and even when Chang Chun Qianli was just a hair's breadth away from touching him, he did not move. Damn. Could he really be asleep? Chang Chun Qianli's nearly 1-minute trial test was fruitless, and the uneasiness and uncertainty in his heart finally dissipated. Chito's Nagafune did not hesitate, and suddenly stepped on the floor with her right foot. Her body flew up to the roof of the corridor, and her legs in a bow stance directly crushed the lighting tube. Then, Chito's Nagafune took advantage of the dim light at that moment, and her right fist, which was falling, hit GLUO's neck directly. GLUO. Go up, cough cough cough. The purple-eyed girl wanted to remind her again, but the cough of discomfort interrupted her. But the next moment, Zinki Zilan didn't care about her body at all. She was shocked by GLUO's reaction and opened her eyes wide. At that moment, just when Chito's Nagafune was about to get close, GLUO, who had his eyes closed, finally moved. He didn't even look back, but just turned his body halfway, grabbed back with his left hand, and caught that moment and knowed exactly. Not only did he miss Chito's Nagafune's right fist, but he also grabbed his forearm directly. Chapter 548 For whom? GLUO. In the coldly lit corridor, Zinki Zilan looked at the young man standing like a long pine tree not far away. Looking at his figure fighting for her life, the worries in her heart were tightly knitted into a ball, and at the same time, the hope-like light was also shining. Countless thoughts surged and collided in Zinki Zilan's mind. At this moment, Zinki Zilan finally understood herself. In fact, it didn't matter so much, and she didn't fight so hard. In the original plan, she was caught here in person, and after getting the information about Ning Zilan from Chang Chun Qianli, she immediately unsealed her sister in her body and released the power that had been suppressed in her body for a full 10 years. With an absolutely overwhelming attitude, she killed Chang Chun Qianli, destroyed the base, and rescued Ning Zilan. Zinki Zilan certainly knew that this plan was stupid, and it could even be said that it was reckless. If her sister knew about this plan, she would definitely scold her. But, she had no choice, no other way. After all, that was Ning Zilan. It was Kuang Zinsu. For 10 years, few people know that the Ning Zilan in people's minds is actually a girl named Kuang Zinsu. That is her only and best friend. 10 years ago, Kuang Zinsu was just Kuang Zinsu, but in a car accident on her way home from a trip, her parents died directly, and she was on the verge of death. It was Ning Yiking who saved her, but as a price, Kuang Zinsu could not live as Kuang Zinsu, but became Ning Zilan. The original Ning Zilan became a girl named Zinki Zilan, the second daughter of a large company called Huatang. That day, Zinky Zilan actually refused, resisted, and even quarreled with her sister Ning Yiking, but, in the end she couldn't beat her sister. Because, all this was for her. After all, she was kidnapped and experienced a blood sacrifice that frightened her for a lifetime. Zinky Zilan also knew that her sister was doing it for her safety, but she didn't want to put her best friend in danger. But in the end, she was still persuaded by Kuang Zinsu, because they are best friends. The replacement of identities over the past 10 years has almost made Zinky Zilan completely accustomed to her own set identity. The only thing that can prove that she is still Ning Zilan is that she needs to prove that she is Kuang Zinsu's best friend. Because of her sister's instructions, Zinky Zilan has kept a distance from people for so many years. Only when she is with Kuang Zinsu can she show her true self. Zinky Zilan can say without hesitation that in this world, her sister Ning Yiking is the most important person to her, and below that is Kuang Zinsu, the Ning Zilan in people's eyes. Because of this irreplaceable importance and significance, Zinky Zilan will be so crazy and so desperate after Jingbi betrayed and kidnapped Kuang Zinsu. In order to save Kuang Zinsu, she no longer cares about her sister's warnings and instructions. She just wants to rescue her only best friend, or avenge her. But all this is so difficult, because the force that kidnapped Kuang Zinsu is the Changshan Group, the Great Imperial Court. Although the Huatang Group has developed well, it was only developed by Ning Yiking alone. However, the Changshan Group is essentially a huge empire that dominates the world, consisting of dozens or hundreds of family consortiums in the world under the constraints of a certain existence, tribal, clan, and religion. These three are not enough to describe the Changshan Group, but they can each describe one of its aspects. In front of the complete Changshan Group, the Huatang Group is as immature as a child. Zinky Zilan cannot let the entire group be buried with her because of her willfulness. Therefore, the Huatang Group cannot attack the Changshan Group or the Great God, not at all. But all the forces outside of Huatang were taken away by Ning Yiking. She took away all the forces, except the Huatang Group, just like stepping onto the battlefield. Before Ning Yiking left, she told Zinky Zilan that either she would bring back the new flag of this world, or she would die forever on the other side and bid farewell to this world in silence. Zinky Zilan couldn't know everything her sister did, because Ning Yiking deliberately concealed it, but she understood that the farewell that time might be forever. For several months, Ning Yiking didn't come back after all. Zinky Zilan tried all methods and all channels, but didn't get any answers. Everything like a hammer sound. She had already lost her sister, so Zinky Zilan couldn't allow herself to lose her best friend again. Or after her best friend was killed, she could only remain silent, and even revenge was impossible. So, she persuaded Zinky Zen, persuaded this person who Ning Yiking arranged for her, like a sister, a mother, and a servant. In order to protect the Huatang Chamber of Commerce, she chose to do it all with her own strength. She was determined, and thought about giving her best friend an explanation at the cost of falling into darkness. Zinky Zilan thought so, so even if she was afraid and uneasy, she forced herself to go to this step and end it all. This is a choice she must make. Whether she is willing or not, wants or not, afraid or not, she has to do it. This is the stubbornness of Zinky Zilan, and it is also her bottom line as a person who has abandoned herself and lives in a shell. She must use her life as a sharp blade to avenge those who died because of her. Tooth for tooth, blood for blood, life for life. However, she did not expect that Gluo would show up in this stage she had expected with such a sharp and dazzling trajectory. This boy, who is the same age as her, is obviously 18 years old and naive, but mature and determined, like a rock wall that stands firm in the storm and waves. In the clear summer sky, he looks plain and simple, with nothing worthy of attention. But when dark clouds cover the sky, hurricanes set off waves, and the tide trembles like a landslide, his firmness and calmness make people feel unimaginable peace of mind. It also gives Zinky Zilan the courage to continue to fight. She is humble and timid. She wants to avenge her friend, but she doesn't want to fall into darkness like this. She is greedy and stupid. She puts herself in danger, but before she dies, she craves for salvation. Yes, she is so unreasonable, so willful, but if someone is still willing to stand up and save her in such a situation, then this person must be a hero. From beginning to end. At this moment, what GLUO showed in front of Xingzaki was the image that the girl longed for. He came here for her, he risked his life for her, he faced Changchun and Qianli for her. Now, he stands here, standing in front of her, just because of her. Chapter 549. That's it. Xingqi Zilan's sight, covered by blood, was shaking in a hazy state. She looked at GLUO's figure who was fighting to the death, and her thoughts were blurred and winding. In the eyes of the girl, GLUO was like a hero who stepped into the darkness alone, but all this was just an explanation in GLUO's heart. Ning Zilan was dead, and he had failed. Therefore, GLUO would not allow Xingqi Zilan to die again, and would not allow this close friend of Ning Zilan to risk his life to save Ning Zilan's girl from falling into darkness. Because, even if he failed, he would definitely make a comeback and save something from the hands of fate. So, at this moment, GLUO completely gave up his human identity and embraced the gift that had been dormant in his heart. Xingan, thank you. GLUO whispered the words of thanks, and the petite and charming figure seemed to flash before his eyes, and his consciousness returned to reality from the darkness. But at this moment, GLUO's mind was still taking over the control of the body, and the attack reaction made by the body was actually still a conditioned reflex. On the other side, Changchun and Qianli certainly didn't know all this. He didn't even think that his show-off trajectory would be easily seen through by GLUO. What? At this moment, Changchun and Qianli was still shocked by GLUO's perception and accuracy, but his body had been smashed to the ground by GLUO's falling force. Boom. That was a force that humans could not reach. The source power lingering around Changchun and Qianli was even shaken away by the huge force. Although the source power had removed most of the damage, the steel ground in the impact of the smash still made Changchun and Qianli instantly lose his breath. Arsehole. Changchun and Qianli's combat experience was naturally good. In the critical moment, he did not hesitate. The source power of his right hand gathered and directly shook GLUO's palm away and pulled his arm out. But to Changchun and Qianli's surprise, his struggle was not delayed at all. It can even be said that GLUO let him go directly. This grab, GLUO was not trying to trap himself. Changchun and Qianli suddenly raised his eyes eagerly, but it was too late. When Changchun and Qianli was concentrating his thoughts, GLUO's right hand, which had no source power, had already clenched into a fist and swung out, hitting his lower abdomen heavily. Bang. Ah. Changchun and Qianli rolled on the ground while holding his lower abdomen in a wailing voice. He no longer had the spare time he had before. GLUO's attack, which had no source power at all, should not have hurt him, but the force GLUO exerted was too great. That was not the strength that a human could use at all. Instead, it could be said to be a full strength attack of a 4th silver rank wild beast. The destiny weapon named Heaven's Blade Killing was lodging in GLUO's right arm. Even if GLUO did not summon it, the characteristics of killing itself had already made GLUO's right arm extremely resistant to source power penetration. The terrible force of this blow directly broke Changchun and Qianli's source defense. His abdomen collapsed into a pit, and the metal ground was concave. The huge impact force pushed it away, and a whole row of lights went out in the shattering. Puff. Wow. Changchun and Qianli's head fell on the ground on its side, and thick plasma suddenly spurted out of his mouth. Under the pressure of the crisis of death, Changchun and Qianli struggled to roll out. GLUO, who should have taken advantage of the victory, paused at this time, as if he had completely woken up from a half-dream and half-wakeful state, and raised his head in some confusion. That's it? Changchun and Qianli was so angry at GLUO's appearance that his teeth were about to break. The expression that was obviously mocking, but not mocking, was even more infuriating. So, Changchun and Qianli no longer held back, and suppressed the blood of God in his body, allowing it to play. Under the power that transcends the laws of this world, Changchun and Qianli's vitality becomes incredibly strong. The black blood like a swamp begins to rapidly erode his body, repairing his broken organs and injured body. At this moment, the filthy darkness lingers around Changchun and Qianli, like a ferocious beast, completely devouring him. On the other side, GLUO stood there with a smile, and the source of star-colored energy was lingering around him, constantly overflowing. Source power, that is the most magnificent scenery and the most real color in the body of a living being. Its brilliant splendor comes from the thoughts and souls, body and will of a living being. What it shines is the infinite mystery and unpredictable future. GLUO faced one side of his body calmly. Compared with Chang'e and Qianli, who was wrapped in the 5 turbidities of darkness, GLUO at this time was like a transformed star spirit. Silently, the dense mist of source power that blocked his vision completely wrapped GLUO into a cocoon. His body was lifted into the air, and invisible waves continued to spread. Is this promotion to the 4th silver stage? Zinky Zinian sat on the ground, staring at the gorgeous star colors around GLUO, and finally understood what GLUO had been talking about. It turned out that he was at the critical moment of breaking through from the peak of the 3 blue steel stage to the 4th silver stage. He had been working very hard, and had not stopped. Who in the brilliance of substance, GLUO exhaled a long breath, which was so long that it seemed to expel all the remaining air in his body. Then, the purple-blue star source power began to flow into his heart like a tide. The surging torrent was like a big hole in his heart, sucking the source power well in. As the brilliance of the source power disappeared in the air, GLUO also revealed his figure. He floated in the air, closing his eyes, as if he was sleeping. At this time, every breath of GLUO became long and deep, and a faint source power overflowed from his mouth and nose, indicating that some kind of change was about to be completed. Boom. 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 GLUO's heart began to beat vigorously, and the sound like a drum faintly caused the air to vibrate. A light purple-blue glow shone from GLUO's heart. The core of the power and blood called the source crystal had been completed. The next moment, like a long-awaited sweet dew, the completely liquefied star source power began to spread outward with the source crystal of the heart as the center point. Every bone, every piece of flesh, every blood vessel, every inch of skin, and every hair of GLUO was bathed in the source power like liquid mist. Then, as if something was engraved, several star-colored streamers extended from the source crystal of the heart. They passed through GLUO's chest and neck, and finally met at GLUO's back. The specks of light splashed out brilliant sparks when they collided, and lifelike patterns were born in the collision. In just a few breaths, a disaster skeleton covering GLUO's entire back was completed. Chapter 554 Silver Stage. It was a star dragon, that was as bright and dazzling as the stars, gorgeous and majestic. Evil corpse. Humans have completely integrated the most fundamental blood of wild beasts, as well as the symbol of their indelible half-souls. It is a proof that humans have conquered the wild and primitive, elemental power, and it is also the fundamental reason why humans can form source crystals in their bodies. After the evil corpse was completed, GLUO slowly fell back to the ground. He took a long breath and slowly opened his eyes. At this time, GLUO's pupils also turned into the vertical pupils of the star dragon, and the gorgeous colors of the sea of stars shone in his pupils, deep and distant. 4th Silver Rank Realm warriors use source crystals as the source of source power, allowing element to coexist in blood and flesh. Thus, the 4th of the 8 gates in the human body, injury gate. The evolution it brings is called clearance, that is, feeling the soul of oneself. Integrate the half-soul of the wild beast in the body and shape a new self. Is this 4th silver stage? GLUO slowly clenched his fists. He felt that he was completely different from before. He was completely reborn and completely different from the past. The transformation in just 1 or 2 minutes was like an insect that had finally completed its cocooning. It completely transformed GLUO's accumulation into perfect strength. 4 times the physical strength of a normal person. GLUO could clearly feel without any measurement that his single attribute as a warrior of the initial stage of 4th silver stage had reached the level of 1000 strings. No, not just a single attribute, but strength, agility, physique, spirit, soul, bloodline. These 6 attributes, GLUO has reached the level of 1000 strings. The bloodline of the star dragon is too powerful and overbearing. Just after the fusion, it directly pulled GLUO into a hexagonal warrior. Source crystal, condensation, body, promotion, source power, liquefaction, wrath corpse, construction, clear, evolution, wild god, mourn. These are the 6 steps for a realm warrior to advance to the 4th silver rank. GLUO has now completed the first 5 steps of the promotion, but the last step, GLUO cannot complete immediately. Because, at this time, Changchuan Qianli has already attacked. Wild God Mourn. There is no way to release it. GLUO spat in disgust, and the perfect promotion was interrupted. Unknowingly, his star dragon's vertical pupils once again turned back to the original human pupils. Bang! Changchuan Qianli, who rushed over, did not cause the fatal damage to GLUO as he imagined. Instead, GLUO waved his hand to open it, just like driving away a mosquito. GLUO, I'm going to kill you. Kill you. Kill you. Changchuan Qianli was completely crazy at this time. The source of energy around him had turned black and red. His blood vessels were bulging, as if black ink was flowing through them. Hey, do you think you can do it? As a 4th silver rank realm warrior, can you release the power of the wild beast bloodline? You can't even release the wild god sorrow. How pitiful. GLUO was interrupted in his perfect promotion process. Of course, he was unhappy, and his mouth was the most vicious ridicule. As a wild god of the star dragon, GLUO had hoped to complete the bloodline tracing and gain the ability to liberate his own wild beast bloodline as soon as he was promoted, but this process of feeling was interrupted by Changchuan Qianli, the loser. There are still many realm warriors who can be promoted to 4th silver rank, but there are very few who can truly complete the bloodline tracing and obtain the qualification to release wild god sorrow. This kind of thing can only be done by a genius, and a cheater like Changchuan Qianli can't do it. I don't need that kind of ability. I'm a believer in God. Changchuan Qianli's hysterical appearance at this time was really ugly. He roared like a beast, trying to kill GLUO with a life-for-life fighting method. However, the gap between the two was too big. It was nearly 4 times the crushing. GLUO just swung 2 punches and completely broke Changchuan Qianli's offensive. Asshole. How is it possible? Changchuan Qianli fell to the ground, looked down at his right arm, and his teeth were already trembling. Just now, after that attack, his right arm had been hanging by his side, unable to move anymore. Dense cracks covered the bones, and the wounds, where the muscles were stretched, were broken layer by layer. Several tangled blood vessels also burst suddenly, and black blood gushed out, but the bleeding stopped after a few seconds. GLUO's first punch defeated Changchuan Qianli's charge head-on, and caused devastating injuries to his arm, while the second punch landed on Changchuan Qianli's stomach. Why is this happening? Changchuan Qianli covered the dent in his lower abdomen, still unable to believe that a person who had just been promoted to the 4th silver rank could actually exert such terrible physical power. It was an absolute crushing of physical strength, speed, and ability, and also an absolute crushing of the quantity, quality, and nature of source power. At this moment, Changchuan Qianli's crazy brain suddenly sobered up because of the fear of death and the panic of losing his future. After all, he had reached the end of his rope. GLUO. Zinkies in iron. I'm sorry. I was wrong. I just wanted to put pressure on you, not to kill you. Changchuan Qianli didn't bother to recover from her injuries, and forced herself to slowly get up from the ground, with a flattering smile on her face. I used to live a miserable life, being bullied and despised every day. In fact, I just wanted to be strong. I'm not a bad person. I'm not like my teacher, who has crazy ideas. You what? GLUO took light steps, and with the push of the source of power, he instantly came to Changchuan Qianli's side. Then, GLUO raised his left arm expressionlessly and grabbed Changchuan Qianli's neck. On the other side, Zinki Zilan didn't know GLUO's current mental state. She didn't dare to say anything or move. She just watched GLUO dragging Changchuan Qianli to the wall. GLUO, please don't kill me. I can tell you everything. All the truth. I'm innocent too. I'm also a victim. I'm also a human being, just like you. To bow down before the strong and to commit violence against the weak is really disgusting. GLUO looked at Changchuan Qianli's pleading expression indifferently. He pinched Changchuan Qianli's jaw with his right hand and started to slam it against the metal wall again and again. Thump, thump, thump. Please. Don't. I'm sorry. I didn't mean it. I was wrong. Please. Chang Chun Kyanli only felt as if his jaw was clamped by an iron clamp, and his head was slammed heavily against the wall, and the force of the impact was getting stronger and stronger. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.